Chapter 241, Chen Shang. Su Ming was about to turn around and walk towards Hu Zi when he paused for a moment, but it was just for a moment. He did not even turn his head back before coming down to the ground towards the snoring Hu Zi. When Bai Su saw Su Ming turn a deaf ear towards her, she frowned and came to despise him. She turned around and went in the direction Sima Xin had left. Her movements were elegant, and when she turned around and left, her body moved in the wind in a manner overflowing with wild beauty. Even now, Su Ming did not turn his head back to look at Bai Su. This girl was no different from anyone else to him. The only thing special about her was her face that was incredibly similar to Bai Ling's, which caused the wave of emotions in him previously. Yet now, that wave had returned to stillness. There was still some uncertainty in his heart, but it was not about Bai Su, it was the attitude of the Fourth Summit's left preceptor. The words he uttered just now clearly held the implications of him somewhat siding with Su Ming. I'm not close with the left preceptor, so why did he do that? Su Ming's eyes sparkled and his master, Tian Xie, appeared in his mind. Hu Zi was still snoring on the ground and there was quite a large amount of drool that had flowed out of his mouth. There was even a silly grin on his face, as if he was having the time of his life in his dream. Ziche stood by his side respectfully, and once Su Ming got closer, he immediately wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to him. Greetings, Uncle Master Su. His respect did not seem faked but came from within his heart. Once he saw Su Ming's battle against Sima Xin, he felt fortunate that he had run into Su Ming's second senior when he went to try and attack him. Ziche had no confidence that he could win against Su Ming at all if he had fought against him and come face to face with all the divine abilities he just saw. He could actually force Sima Xin to use the great art of Heartless Berserker Seed. This Su Ming will definitely be an extraordinary presence in Freezing Sky Clan in the future. Ziche was certain of this. When he remembered the killing intent he felt on Su Ming's body and the calm tone he used when he was in Hu Zi's cave abode, that respect turned into reverence. Su Ming nodded his head. The moment his feet touched the ground, He Feng charged back from the sky, looking rather roughed up. When Sima Xin left, the soul of the ice wolf also left with him. At that moment, as He Feng came back to Su Ming, his body was trembling slightly, but there was an even deeper reverence within his eyes compared to Ziche's when he looked at Su Ming. He could be said to have watched Su Ming arrive at this state since he was still weak. The person before him now was completely different from the Su Ming in the past. It was precisely because he had witnessed his growth that his respect towards Su Ming was much stronger and deeper compared to the others. He knew that Su Ming was not a foolishly kind person. His actions could be vicious, and if anyone offended him, he would definitely take revenge. Master, He Feng bowed deeply towards Su Ming with an ashamed look on his face. Master, my power could not compare to the wolf spirits, but don't worry, I'll definitely train hard and become your right hand in the future. I definitely won't let you down. He Feng lifted his head and patted his chest as he made his promise. You should come back now. Su Ming cast He Feng a look before lifting his right hand and clenching his fist towards the sky. Both Spirit Plunder and Han Mountain Bell charged back instantly and spun around Su Ming a few times before he put Spirit Plunder back into his storage bag while Han Mountain Bell fused into his body and disappeared from sight. He Feng too quickly disappeared. Only when they were all gone did Su Ming turn around and look towards the goal of his trip this time, the artifact storage hall behind him. At that moment, standing outside the artifact storage hall was the man whom Hu Zi called a woman disguising herself as a man by pointing and practically shouting at him. When she saw Su Ming looking over, there was a great difference in her expression compared to when she looked at him before Sima Xin's return. Her expression before had been filled with disgust and resignation, and if she could, she would have avoided them like the plague. Since she disliked Hu Zi, all those who came with him were also hated. Yet now, there was respect on her face. When Su Ming's gaze fell on her, she immediately took a few steps forward and bowed deeply towards him with her fist wrapped in her palm. I am Chen Shang. Greetings, Uncle Master Su. Chen Shang was actually very beautiful and looked as pretty as a picture. However, under careful disguise, Chen Zhang's skin was rather dark, which made it seem like a pearl that had its shine hidden away, causing others to be unable to tell whether Chen Shang was a man or a woman at first glance. She was also wearing a loose robe that hid the lines of her body. If Hu Zi had not mentioned that this person was actually a woman pretending to be a man, Su Ming would not have been able to find any clues about it. Yet when his gaze fell upon this person, he gradually saw some hints. However, he did not stare for a long time. He averted his gaze very soon. "I'd like to enter the artifact storage hall and choose some papers. I hope you'll allow me to do so." Su Ming did not put on the airs of an uncle master as he spoke unhurriedly towards the other person. Chen Shang quickly nodded and took a few steps back to open the path with a respectful look. "Uncle Master Su, this way, please. I usually manage the artifact storage hall. Please wait inside for a moment. I'll bring the papers you need now." Under Chen Zhang's guidance, Su Ming walked into the artifact storage hall. As for Ziche, he remained outside taking care of the snoring Hu Zi. Without Su Ming's permission, he did not dare follow behind him. Perhaps before Su Ming fought against Sima Xin, Ziche would have still done so, but it would not have been a matter of whether he dared or dared not follow Su Ming. Yet now, when he witnessed the might of Su Ming's power, Ziche had a sudden change of impression towards the ninth summit. In his eyes, all the people in that summit were weird, but even if they were weird, everyone besides Hu Zi should be powerful berserkers. That gentle man who loved flowers was so. Su Ming, whose killing intent was revealed just now, was also a powerful berserker. There was also their eldest senior fellow disciple, the person who was in constant isolation. By Ziche's assumptions, this person should be an even more powerful existence. This is the true ninth summit. The other rumors are all fake. Only when you've entered the ninth summit will you be able to understand the terrors of the oddities staying there. Ziche sucked in a deep breath. He had a feeling that perhaps entering the ninth summit this way might not actually be something bad for him. It might even be a sort of chance for him. While he was immersed in his thoughts, Hu Zi's rhythmic snores fell into his ears. That sound might not seem loud in broad daylight, but in the quiet night, if anyone heard that sound in the forest, they would definitely think it was some big insect or a ferocious beast, and their expressions would definitely change to that of fear. Those snores were like roars that sounded like rumbles when it fell into a person's ears. Ziche turned his head around and cast Hu Zi a look, and curiosity gradually appeared in his eyes. This person is most likely not someone mediocre as well. He remembered how this man had grabbed his hands when he was in his cave abode and forced him into deep slumber. The things that had happened in his dreams made his face gradually turn pale. Entering dreams, if he could bring any person into his dream anytime he wanted, then his power would be terrifying. They're monsters. All the people in the ninth summit are monsters. The more Ziche thought about it, the more shocked he was, yet similarly, the more shocked he was, the more tempted he became. Su Ming sat in one of the chairs in the artifact storage hall. There was an oil lamp on the table by his side. It might still be bright outside, but the light from the fire still let out a light that spread to its surroundings. The artifact storage hall was not very big, but it was not small either. There were rows upon rows of shelves stocked with all sorts of things. Some of them looked slightly broken and worn down, while others still looked new. He could see Chen Zhang's body occasionally flitting through the shelves. She was walking through them briskly and picking out different types of papers from the shelves. After a moment, she brought the papers before Su Ming and placed them respectfully on the table, then took a few steps back and whispered with his head lowered, "Uncle Master Su, the items in the artifact storage hall are not complete. We only have these types of papers here. Please take a look to see which one you want, and I'll bring more of it for you. These papers are used by the disciples from the other summits for recording purposes. If you think it's not enough, we still have bamboo slips in store." As Chen Shang spoke, she started sizing up Su Ming from the corners of her eyes. Su Ming nodded his head and looked at the papers on the table. Most of them were rough and dark brown in color. Some of them were even of a quality worse than beast skins. When Chen Shang saw a light crease appear between Su Ming's brows, she quickly said, Uncle Master Su, we only have these here. You could take a look around and see whether you can find anything to replace these papers." Su Ming got up when he heard the words and walked towards the shelves. Before he walked too far away, he suddenly stopped and pointed towards an item at his side as he looked at Chen Shang. How many of these do you have? Chen Shang followed behind Su Ming and immediately turned towards where he was pointing. She saw a white wooden block about the length of an arm and the breadth of a palm on the shelf. Its color was so white that it seemed spotlessly clean. This is solid white wood. This sort of wood doesn't exist around Freezing Sky Clan. It's rumored that it's only produced in a place hundreds of thousands of li to the east of Freezing Sky Clan. Since the color is nice, it's usually used to make chairs. I have some of this wood here. While speaking, Chen Shang quickly took a few steps forward and brought out several wooden blocks of the same type. Uncle Master Su, these are the only ones we have. Thank you. That will be enough. Su Ming smiled faintly and took the white pieces of wood. With a flick of his right wrist, these wooden blocks instantly disappeared and were put away into his storage bag. About the price for these wooden blocks, Su Ming looked at Chen Shang and found himself not knowing what to say. Uncle Master Su, you're being too distant. You just arrived in Freezing Sky Clan. These things aren't really expensive, so I can still make the decision on how to deal with them. You can just take them away. Chen Shang quickly waved the question away and smiled. In Su Ming's eyes, that smile now revealed hints that Chen Shang was truly a woman pretending to be a man. However, he believed that Hu Zi was not the first to see through this. Everyone had their own secrets and stories they did not want to tell others. There must be a reason as to why Chen Shang always dressed up this way in Freezing Sky Clan. Thank you. Su Ming did not reject the offer and nodded towards Chen Shang. Oh, that's right, Uncle Master Su, you must be thinking about making your own wooden slips from that solid white wood. If that's the case, you'll need some special string. As Chen Shang spoke, she brought out a white reel of thread and gave it to Su Ming. When I was looking for the other solid white wood, I saw this. It has been lying around the hall for many years. I heard that it's the tendon from a ferocious beast and is very sturdy. It'll definitely be able to connect the wooden slips together. Su Ming did not take it. Instead, he looked at Chen Shang with the ghost of a smile on his lips. If this person had decided to give him the wooden blocks, he could still marginally think of it as Chen Shang trying to express goodwill to him. Yet if she wanted to give him the beast's tendon, then this was definitely not something as simple as trying to get into his good graces. After all, Su Ming did not really fit into the description of an uncle master. When Chen Shang saw that expression on Su Ming's face, an awkward look appeared on her face. After a moment of hesitation, she gritted her teeth and bowed deeply towards Su Ming. Uncle Master Su, please help me. Chapter 242, Chen Zhang's Request. Su Ming did not speak immediately but stood in the hall and stared at Chen Shang. There was a sharp glint in his eyes, and when Chen Shang saw that glint, she felt as if she had been seen through and her darkest secrets were revealed. Chen Shang shuddered and lowered her head because she did not dare look into his eyes. She took a few steps back once again. Speak. I'll consider it, Su Ming said calmly, his words unhurried. If you're willing to help me, Uncle Master Su, then it'll definitely work. Chen Shang bit her bottom lip. Her current look made her unconsciously reveal more of her feminine characteristics. Uncle Master Su, please help me, make Uncle Master Sun Dahu stop sneaking outside my room at midnight, to peek. I really can't get used to it, Chen Shang whispered, finally managing to speak of her request in a more tactful manner. Once she finished speaking, she bent her body and bowed towards Su Ming. Uncle Master Su, please help me. Su Ming's expression instantly turned strange. He had thought of a lot of possibilities, but he absolutely did not expect Chen Shang to give him the wooden blocks and tendons for this. From this alone, it could be seen just how much trauma Hu Zi had left in the hearts of the people. When he recalled what had happened when Hu Zi brought him here from the 9th summit up to the point he fell asleep, Su Ming could not help but laugh wryly. Su Ming hesitated for a moment before he spoke his thoughts. I'll try my best to persuade him from it, but I can't promise you success. He too would not like someone crouching around him at night watching his every move. When he remembered the strange smile on Hu Zi's face when he was peeking at his second senior brother, it was not difficult for Su Ming to think of that smile on Hu Zi's face while he was peeking at other people as well. He cast a pitying glance at Chen Shang. When she heard Su Ming's words, gratitude instantly appeared on her face. That gratitude was not a show but came from within the depths of her heart, which just went to show just how deeply affected she was by Huzi's harassment. Removing Uncle Master Huzi, whose presence was really just like that of a nightmare at night to her, was the most important thing to Chen Shang at the moment. Amidst her gratitude and respect, Su Ming walked out of the artifact storage hall. Chen Shang followed behind him and gave a deep bow towards Su Ming. The eager look in her eyes made Su Ming instinctively look towards the snoring Huzi behind Ziche, who were both located not too far away from him. "I'll try my best." Su Ming nodded at Chen Shang and walked towards Huzi. Once he had him in his arms, he took a step into the air and turned into a long arc that charged back to the 9th summit. Ziche quickly followed behind him and looked at Su Ming's back before him. Resolution appeared in his eyes. With Su Ming in front and Ziche following behind him, the two of them soon arrived at the 9th summit from the buildings underneath Heaven Gate. On the way, Su Ming ran into some Freezing Sky Clan disciples. Once these people saw him, those who recognized him would immediately stop and wrap their fists in their palms to greet him. They only started moving again when Su Ming left. The people who called him Uncle Master Su were not many, but it was way different compared to how he had been treated previously. If there were some who did not understand what was happening while they stood beside those who did, they would quickly ask in low whispers. Once they obtained the answer, disbelief would appear on their faces, and their gazes that followed Su Ming would become different. After a moment, when the 9th summit appeared before Su Ming's eyes, he and Ziche quickly arrived to Huzi's cave abode. Su Ming landed outside and brought Huzi inside before placing him down on the spot he usually slept. As he looked at the loudly snoring Huzi, a smile appeared on Su Ming's face. He grabbed a wine gourd by the side and placed it where Huzi could reach it before turning around and leaving. Ziche was standing respectfully outside the cave. When he saw Su Ming coming out, he immediately lowered his head, looking as if he was waiting for his orders. "I originally wanted to turn you into medicinal liquid." Su Ming's gaze fell upon Ziche. Ziche was silent. There was an awkward look on his face, and he kept silent with his head lowered. "But if you can get me two people who are nearly dead, then I'll get rid of that thought," Su Ming stated calmly. He had already made his decision. The most important thing for him to do while he was in Freezing Sky Clan's 9th summit was to train. He must make himself stronger. Only by doing so could he win against Sima Xin in the short run, and in the long run, walk out of Sky Mist Barrier and out of the land of South Morning. All of these required him to be powerful. The battle with Sima Xin may have made them seem as if they were equals, but Su Ming knew that he had lost during that battle. If his master had not intervened and given him enough time to copy the power of the world contained within the sword stroke, he would have definitely lost when that sword struck down. Even with Tian Xiezi's help, Su Ming still felt a strong sense of danger looming over his head when Sima Xin casted the great art of Heartless Berserker Seed, and that danger was not something he could dissolve with his current power. Even if he still had one treasure left, not having brought out the fire ice his eldest senior brother had given him, that thing was still considered an external object and did not come from within him. All these made Su Ming clearly understand that his power was still very weak. In his current state, he would not even be able to leave Sky Mist Barrier, much less go back home. He would not even be able to have an easy time in Freezing Sky Clan. These thoughts had been circulating in Su Ming's mind all the way back. "Uncle Master Su, it won't be difficult to obtain people who are nearly dead. I promise you, within 3 years, I'll definitely be able to obtain 2 living corpses with incredible power for you. The shamans outside Sky Mist Barrier are the best choice," Ziche quickly said with a respectful tone. While Ziche was speaking, Su Ming had already walked into the distance with his back towards him, as if he did not hear the other's voice. As he continued walking forward, it made Ziche anxious and worried. When Su Ming was about to disappear from his sight, the man's slow voice reached his ears. "I'm lacking a person guarding my cave abode at night. If you want to, then come with me." Ziche felt his spirits lift and immediately shouted loudly, "I want to." He was already moving when the words left his mouth and immediately followed behind Su Ming. They disappeared from Huzi's place. Su Ming returned to his cave abode. The simple cave now looked different in his eyes. There was now a slight hint of warmth there, and even a feeling of home. The platform outside the cave was covered with plants that could grow in ice and snow. However, there was a small spot on the platform that was left empty. That was the spot Su Ming had asked his second senior brother to leave empty for him to meditate. The green grass swayed in the freezing wind, as if struggling to survive in this biting cold environment. There was a resilient life force within it, and when he looked at it, Su Ming had a vague feeling that he was looking at his second senior brother. He suddenly understood why his second senior brother planted so many plants in most of the areas in the ninth summit. It was because he treated the mountain as his home, and his presence was just like the plants in the mountain. As long as there was a spot where his plants grew, that place would be labeled as his protected area. Take for example this place. There were no plants here before he came here, but once Su Ming built his cave abode, his second senior brother dropped by with his plants and covered the place with them. A silent heartwarming feeling seeped into Su Ming's heart as the plants and flowers swayed in the wind. He crouched down and looked at them with a smile on his face. This was a warmth he rarely felt after he arrived in the land of South Morning. The smile on his face was a reflection of the warmth he felt when he was in Dark Mountain. It had always been kept hidden in Su Ming's heart, but now, it appeared once again on his lips. Ziche stood not too far respectfully as he kept an eye on Su Ming. When he saw that smile on his face, he was baffled. It was as if the person before him was no longer the person he respected, the one who had enough power to fight against Sima Xin, and the Uncle Master Su who was filled with a murderous aura, but instead a young man who had just reached adulthood and was still a little wet behind the ears. Yet that bafflement only lasted for an instant. When Su Ming stood up, that smile was gone, and the feeling Ziche had, which might have been just his misconception, immediately vanished. The young man who had just become an adult was gone. In his place was the usual Uncle Master Su who had a murderous aura beneath his calm demeanor. "Without my orders, do not enter the cave abode. Stay outside and wait for my orders." Su Ming's cold voice fell into Ziche's ears as he walked towards his cave abode, which was still lacking a door. Ziche immediately obeyed respectfully. He took a few steps back and retreated to a spot that had no wind before sitting down. A look of uncertainty and confusion appeared in his eyes for a moment before it was quickly replaced by resolution. 3 years, perhaps these 3 years won't be a disaster for me, but a form of serendipity, let's hope that's the case. Ziche closed his eyes and sank into a meditative state. Nonetheless, his mind remained alert of his surroundings. Just like a guard, he performed his duties. Su Ming was also sitting inside his cave abode. The sky was gradually darkening outside. He slowly brought out the pieces of solid white wood he had obtained from the artifact storage hall and placed them in front of himself before also bringing out the beast tendon. The tendon had extremely great ductility. Even if he held only a small section of the tendon in his hand, he could still make it stretch out to incredible lengths. The pieces of solid white wood were not cut in the same length and size. Some of them were longer while some shorter. Some of them were about 3 fingers tall, and some at only the height of 2 fingers. Su Ming stared at those wooden pieces, and after remaining silent for a moment, he quickly lifted both of his hands and grabbed a piece of wood. With a flick of his wrist, many wooden scraps flew into the air. After a moment, he placed the piece of wood down and picked up another one. After a long while, once Su Ming had trimmed all of the wooden pieces, 9 wooden pieces lay before him. All of these blocks were about the length of his arm, the breadth of 5 fingers, and the height of 2 fingers. They all looked the same and were all white. With just one glance, it was difficult to determine whether they were wood or white jade. Once Su Ming placed the 9 pieces of wood together, a big drawing board appeared before him. There may have been very fine cracks between the wooden pieces, but if he used force and pressed against them, he could cover them up. Su Ming then brought out the beast tendon and green light shone at the center of his brows. The small sword flew towards the beast tendon and cut it up into several sections which he used to tie up the wooden pieces on his drawing board. Due to the ductility and flexibility of the tendon, the cracks on the drawing board disappeared, but if he used force to roll up this drawing board like he would do a piece of beast skin, then it would turn into a cylinder under that force. Chapter 243, The Strange Rod Insect. Su Ming looked at the drawing board he had created, then lifted his right hand and gently stroked its surface. The drawing board was smooth, and he could not feel even a hint of roughness on it. "You'll be helping me understand the laws of creation in the world from now on," Su Ming mumbled and slowly closed his eyes. The world outside was already dark. As the chilling wind moaned in the air, it landed on the ninth summit and swept past the platform outside Su Ming's cave. Some of the wind even entered his cave and lifted his long hair. Su Ming had his eyes closed. He was not trying to reach any sort of epiphany, neither was he immersing himself in his training. His mind was blank. However, a girl gradually appeared in his empty mind. The girl had a beautiful laughter and her eyes twinkled, causing the others to be attracted by her charm when they saw her. As the girl's body gradually grew clearer, a wild beauty could be seen on her. She was like a flower refusing to be restrained and obstinately growing in a forest while giving out a natural and incredibly attractive fragrance. She was dressed in white robes, and she was looking at Su Ming with a smile. "Bai Ling, Bai Su," he mumbled. With his eyes closed, he lifted his right hand and started drawing on the recently formed white drawing board with his finger as his brush. With each stroke, an illusionary line would appear on the drawing board. That illusionary line would seem formless to others and they would not be able to see it, as if there was no line to begin with. Since there was no brush and his fingers were only sweeping by the board, it seemed as if there were no signs left behind. Yet because Su Ming was using his heart to draw, he could see exactly what he was drawing every time his finger passed by the board. Perhaps more accurately speaking, he was drawing out what he saw in his mind. He was drawing out a feeling, an aura, and it was something that the naked eye could not see. Time passed by gradually. The whistling sounds from the chilling wind became stronger during the night, but the cave remained silent. The only sound inside was of Su Ming sweeping his finger repeatedly on the drawing board. However, that sound was too weak in the face of the wind and could not be heard. A night passed by. When the sun peeked out from the horizon, Su Ming's right hand stopped moving on the drawing board and he opened his eyes. He looked at the drawing board. To others, this drawing board would be no different from how it was before the previous night. It was still empty, yet in Su Ming's eyes, there was a girl on the drawing board. The girl was dressed in white and she had a beautiful smile on her face. She looked alive, but she had no eyes. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he lifted his right hand and drew a few strokes where the girl's eyes should be. Immediately, the girl on the drawing board had eyes. There was an attractive sparkle in those eyes, yet within that sparkle was disgust, causing her entire demeanor to change, making it seem as if she was questioning Su Ming. "She is Bai Su," Su Ming whispered to himself softly. There was a serenity within his eyes that remained still and did not seem like it could be disturbed. He looked at the girl on the drawing board for a long time before he tapped the drawing board with his right hand. The drawing board immediately started trembling, and a thin layer of wood powder broke off from the surface of the board and jumped up. It looked like a veil that was lifted up, and that veil was the white figure he had drawn on the board. As the powder sprung up like a veil that was lifted, the cold wind from outside came into the cave and raised the powder. It blew past Su Ming's body and scattered away. When the powder disappeared, the drawing board returned to a blank slate once again in Su Ming's eyes. There were no longer any hints of the girl. It was just like Su Ming's heart. After a night of drawing with a calm mind, the slight shock brought by the similar face was gone like the wind. The shock would never be able to affect his heart. It was bright outside by then. Sunlight shone into the cave through the entrance like it was trying to consume darkness. The light stopped 3 feet before Su Ming. He could see sunlight shining down and illuminating the outlines of the cave, making it seem like a ring in the area 3 feet away from him. Yet the spot where he sat was still in darkness. In his silence, Su Ming placed the drawing board on the ground. A glint appeared in his eyes and he brought out Han Mountain Bell. Once the bell appeared, banging sounds immediately came from within. It was clear that the rod-like insect was still struggling inside and trying to break free. Su Ming looked at the bell and a chilling glare appeared in his eyes. When he fought against Sima Xin, besides understanding the power of the world from that one sword strike, he also obtained another thing, the insect within Han Mountain Bell. To him, this creature looked like a strange type of insect, but Sima Xin had said that this was a snake. Su Ming did not have time to think about it at that time, but now that he was in a relaxed and calm state, he lifted his right hand and flicked the shrunken Han Mountain bell before him. The moment he flicked it, bell chimes echoed in the air, but these bell chimes did not spread out. They simply echoed within the bell and lasted for a long period of time. Faint, shrill shrieks could be heard from within the bell, but as the bell continued ringing and shaking, the insect's struggles quickly grew weaker, though it still continued crashing against the bell. Su Ming waited for the time it takes to burn another incense stick. When the insect inside the bell could no longer struggle and only let out incredibly weak and faint cries, Su Ming pointed at Han Mountain Bell with a finger. The bell instantly started growing. Once it was about the size of 10 feet, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes and he made a strange sign with his right hand, albeit with jerky movements. This was one of the few methods to control the bell which appeared in his head after he took the bell as his own. Once he made that strange sign, Su Ming swiftly pushed his right hand forward. Han Mountain Bell immediately jolted. Gradually, ripples appeared on its surface, and the bell became transparent, allowing Su Ming to clearly see the small rod-like insect sealed inside. Its body was bent like a drawn-out bow, as if it could explode with a shocking force at any moment it wanted. There were no signs of it being injured on its body. There was also a ghastly, chilling glint in its eyes, as if it was waiting for a chance. It would have been fine if that was all, but Su Ming saw with his own eyes the insect letting out weak cries from its mouth even though it was full of vigor and just waiting for a chance to attack while looking forth with a fierce glare in its eyes. What a smart insect! Su Ming's eyes sparkled. The intelligence possessed by the strange insect made him sneer coldly. He immediately flicked the bell a few times with his right hand, causing the rumbling sounds to reverberate inside the bell, forming a large amount of sound waves to spread. The insect's face immediately twisted, but it endured all the attacks. The rhythmic cries eventually turned silent. If someone used sounds to determine whether the insect was still alive or dead, then he or she would most probably think that the insect was almost a goner. Yet Su Ming clearly saw that the insect was still bending its body in a stance, ready to attack at any time, even though it was trembling lightly. The glare that showed its cruelty and bloodlust had not diminished one bit, but instead became even stronger in the midst of its pain. This sight moved Su Ming. How in the world did Sima Shen make this creature submit to him? He mumbled. The ferociousness within the creature was a clear sign that it was a gargantuan task to try and subjugate it. I'd like to see just what are the limits of this insect. Su Ming's eyes turned cold. He lifted his right hand, but he did not flick the bell this time. Instead, he slammed his palm against Han Mountain Bell. The moment his palm struck, the rumbling sounds inside reached their maximum volume. The loud sounds may have sounded weak outside the bell, but they were powerful and fierce inside, and those sounds turned into an insane force. The insect immediately trembled viciously. Its bent body seemed to be unable to withstand the force and it gradually grew lax until it eventually completely unfurled, though it was still letting out shrill shrieks. As it continued shrieking, cracks seemed to appear on its body, and a milky white liquid flowed out of its body like blood. Its expression immediately grew dejected and its wings too fell to its sides, but the vicious look in its eyes did not diminish even the slightest. The viciousness had grown even stronger until it even looked like madness. The cruelty in its eyes became even stronger, and it looked like if it found a chance and escaped, it would rain down maddening vengeance on the person who made it suffer so much. Su Ming's expression remained passive as he lifted his right hand and slammed it against Han Mountain Bell once again. The volume of the rumbling sounds inside increased to a new height. Under these bell tolls, the insect's wings were instantly torn apart and broke into two pieces. The insect trembled and looked as if it was about to break down. Lots of blood flowed out and the creature lay within the bell like a lump of mud. It did not have a hint of strength left, as if its life was about to end. Yet Su Ming did not see a hint of surrender in its eyes, neither did he see despair. He only saw that burning ferociousness that almost swore that as long as life had not ended, it would never fade away. Su Ming lifted his right hand for the third time. He knew that if he struck the bell this time, the insect would immediately die. After all, the insect excelled in speed and that piercing ability that shocked Su Ming, not in this type of endurance. After remaining silent for a moment, Su Ming slowly lowered his right hand. He looked at the small insect in Han Mountain Bell. Not only did he see ferociousness and tenaciousness within the insect's eyes, but he also saw its loyalty towards its master, Sima Xin. The reason why he could see the loyalty hidden underneath that cruelty in the insect's eyes was because Su Ming had once seen the same look in his fire ape's, Xiao Hong's, eyes. Xiao Hong. Su Ming could not help but remember the little monkey. He closed his eyes and only opened them after a long while. Calmness returned once again to his eyes, and as he looked at Han Mountain Bell, he suddenly said something in the bell's direction. "You're intelligent, so you must surely understand my words. Since you're so loyal to Sima Xin, why don't we conduct an experiment? Let's see just how important you are to Sima Xin." When the insect heard Su Ming's words, it lifted its head in one swift motion, but it could not see Su Ming. It could only see the endless haziness that surrounded it. "I'm curious what Sima Xin would do for you and what he would choose," Su Ming stated in a dull tone. He lifted his right hand suddenly and tapped the center of his brows with a finger. At the same time, a large amount of stone coins flew up on their own from Su Ming's storage bag and floated to midair. Once they surrounded Su Ming, the branding power erupted from within him. Chapter 244. Using Love as the Seed. The insect's unyielding spirit, cruelty, loyalty, and willingness to die made Su Ming understand that he could not turn that insect into his own pet unless he wasted a long amount of time, perhaps years or even longer. He would not be able to use Han Mountain Bell in that time, only keeping the creature trapped within it to break down its divine sense until he could eventually turn it into his own pet. However, Su Ming did not have the time for this, neither could he waste so much effort for it. Yet if he killed it just like that, Su Ming found it to be quite a waste. The insect's speed and piercing power left a deep impression on him. If he could make it his own, then without a doubt, it would become an incredibly powerful weapon in his hands. Since he found it a waste and did not have time to slowly bring it to his side, there was only one last method for Su Ming to use. He would have to forcefully leave his brand on its mind. He might end up destroying the insect's intelligence, but once it had his brand, it could be used immediately. Even if there was a possibility of the insect betraying him, it was still far better than killing it or not being able to use it. However, Su Ming had only left a brand on someone else's mind once, and that was on He Feng. Besides, He Feng was the one who had taught him how to use this art. In theory, he could use the brand on the insect. Nonetheless, in truth, Su Ming did not have much confidence in this. However, he had been practicing this branding art for quite some time. From what he understood, if the other party did not resist, then it would be easy for him to leave the brand, but if the other party started resisting, then the chances of failure would increase exponentially. If he wanted to search for the chances to increase his success whilst the other party was resisting, then he would have to find its weakness, just like how he would if he was fighting against it. Once he found its weakness, then Su Ming could use his branding art and enter its mind as it was weakened and leave his brand deep within it. It would be easier to find this weakness if the other party was a human, but with this strange insect that was about the size of finger's segment, things would not be so easy. Fortunately, Su Ming had noticed the insect's loyalty to Sima Xin. That was why he said what he said. He wanted to create a weakness in the insect. Once this weakness appeared, then Su Ming would immediately break in with his divine sense. If he was successful, then he could turn the insect into his own. If he failed, then even if he would feel that it was a waste, he would not show mercy. During the very instant Su Ming's divine sense spread out, he gathered it on Han Mountain Bell and entered it before turning into a typhoon within that descended upon the strange, weakened insect. Once Su Ming completely surrounded it within his divine sense, he immediately sensed the insect's divine sense resisting and struggling viciously. That was a spirit that screamed that it would rather die than be controlled, and it turned into an impact that made Su Ming's divine sense falter for a moment. A thought struck Su Ming's mind. As the insect struggled, he gained a new understanding of divine senses and this art. By the looks of it, if my divine sense is strong enough, then I won't even need to find any weaknesses. I can just forcefully leave my brand behind. Under his divine sense, a crack opened up quietly in Han Mountain Bell. The moment the crack appeared, a bit of the insect's presence instantly darted out through the crack. Sima Xin, I'm waiting for you to create this weakness for me. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes and he gathered his divine sense around the struggling insect. At that moment, on the first summit of the great frozen plains of Freezing Sky Clan was an incredibly extravagant cave abode that was located near the top of the mountain. From the outside, that cave abode looked like a towering hall, and Sima Xin was sitting cross-legged within with a sullen face as he meditated with his eyes closed. He was forbidden to leave, and for the next few months, he could not escape the mountain. At that moment, he was remembering the battle with Su Ming in his head. That battle made him truly understand his opponent's power. To him, Su Ming was like a thorn stuck in his throat, and it was unbearable for him. Ever since Sima Xin was born, everything had been easy for him. It had continued even after he entered Freezing Sky Clan. He was regarded highly by the older generation of the school and worshipped by those of the same generation. Besides, he was good at forming good relationships with other people. It could be said that he had an innumerable amount of friends within Freezing Sky Clan. Many of the girls and women among them had been planted with the berserker seed of love. The older generation of the school knew about this, but did not stop him. Their actions relieved him. When he was out traveling to practice the great art of heartless berserker seed, those who caught his eye would find it hard to escape from his grasp. In truth, his next target was Bai Su. That girl had a huge background that many of the disciples did not know. They only knew that she was a common disciple in the 7th summit, but Sima Xin once accidentally learned that her father was one of the people in the 7th layer within the 9 layers of Heaven Gate. Sima Xin did not know the details. After all, Heaven Gate was also a sacred and mysterious place to him. That place was the true core and the gathering place of the most powerful forces within Freezing Sky Clan. The disciples in Heaven Gate rarely came down and appeared before the disciples of the summits in the Great Frozen Plains. One of them was in the sky, and the other on earth. They lived separately as if they were in 2 completely different worlds. Becoming a disciple of Heaven Gate was practically the dream of every single person staying in the summits of the Great Frozen Plains. Yet only the lords of the summits could enter Heaven Gate. If they were not these people, the disciples would need to go through Freezing Sky Cave and retrieve 1,000 shaman heads before they could enter. I must enter Heaven Gate. Sima Xin clenched his fists. He did not harbor any sort of feelings for Bai Su, but as he got in touch with her, he found that Bai Su loved him. Of course, this sort of love was fostered slowly using various methods while he was traveling outside. His goal was not to plant the berserker seed of love within her. After all, Sima Xin was still wary of Bai Su's father in Heaven Gate. Yet this did not prevent him from approaching her, even if he had no thought of planting the berserker seed of love within her. He wanted to use her to help him obtain the right to enter Freezing Sky Cave. After all, Freezing Sky Cave could only be opened with 1,000 shaman heads, and he was far from having enough heads. After all, unless the shamans invaded their land in a large force, he would need to venture out deep into the world outside Sky Mist Barrier to obtain 1,000 shaman heads. This was a little difficult for him. His plan was to enter Freezing Sky Cave first and increase his power in there. Once he was done, he would go out and retrieve the shaman heads. He had more confidence with this plan. This method, which was akin to cheating, was not allowed within Freezing Sky Clan. The others would not be able to understand why this was not allowed, but they could not do anything about it. But Sima Xin did not want to go along with the rules. That was why he set his sights on Bai Su. As long as there was someone within Heaven Gate who opened Freezing Sky Cave for a disciple of the summits in the Great Frozen Plains, then he would be able to achieve his dreams. Besides, he had the confidence of succeeding with his great art of heartless berserker seed, even if it was at the cost of sacrificing all the people. Once he succeeded, then his power would increase exponentially. When that time came, he would not have to worry about not being able to find berserker children. It might require a lot of time, but he believed that it was worth it. That was right until he met Su Ming. More accurately speaking, it was right until he fought against Su Ming. An avaricious thought appeared in his mind. He wanted to plant a berserker seed in Su Ming's body and turn him into his berserker son. By doing so, his chances of success in clearing Freezing Sky Cave would not only increase by several fold, the power he would gain would also increase, and it would also be largely different from what he would gain with his previous plans. There were a lot of benefits in this. There was even a high possibility that he would not need all of his berserker children to die. These benefits made Sima Shin's heart pound in excitement. Bai Su already promised me that she would speak to her father about this and that she would do everything that she can to make her father agree. She even told me that her father has never refused any of her requests before. This matter is practically in the bag. I just don't know how long it'll take, but now, I won't have to hurry either. Right now, the most important thing for me is to make Su Ming into my berserker son. Sima Shin closed his eyes and a myriad of thoughts swam through his head. It's a pity that I can't leave the mountain. Even when the time is up and I can move about freely, it'll be difficult for me to get in touch with Su Ming. If I knew this was the case, I should have given up on Han Mountain Bell and made friends with him, then planted the berserker seed within him. Sima Shin frowned with his eyes closed. As he was immersed in his thoughts, a thought suddenly struck his head. Bai Su. Sima Shin opened his eyes and a sparkle appeared within them. When Su Ming saw Bai Su, there was clearly something different about him, and he didn't seem like he was faking it. A glint appeared within Sima Shin's eyes and his lips gradually curled up in a smile. Use love as a hook, turn it into the berserker seed, and when it blooms, the love felt will turn into nothingness. During that instant, the seed will absorb all the life from that person. If I can create the method of using love to train the heartless art, then I can make changes to it. I'll use Bai Su as the hook and plant a berserker seed in Su Ming. Sima Shin mumbled, and a heartless form of maliciousness was clear in his smile. Su Ming, once I've set my eyes on you, you won't be able to run. A glint appeared in Sima Shin's eyes, yet at that moment, his expression suddenly changed and he lifted his head swiftly. He also rushed out of his cave abode and looked at the ninth summit, which was located far in the distance. My snake. Sima Shin's pupils shrank and his expression instantly grew dark. He could sense his treasured snake's presence. Ever since Su Ming captured his snake, its presence had vanished. With its sudden appearance now, it jerked at the faint connection tying Sima Shin's heart with it. In truth, he had only managed to make the snake acknowledge him as its master because he accidentally obtained a blood picture some time ago. That picture had existed for a long time, and he only discovered the use of the picture after a long amount of time spent on researching through many ancient scrolls. Its use was to allow him to form a connection with certain strange creatures and control them by making them acknowledge him as their master. That blood picture belonged to the shamans living outside Sky Mist Barrier. However, the picture Sima Shin obtained was already torn, and he could not use it for stronger creatures. That was why when he met the snake and witnessed its might along with realizing that the snake was still a baby, he used the blood picture without any hesitation. Right now, he could clearly feel the connection formed by the blood picture being attacked. Although there was little sign of it being whittled down, after a moment, when the snake's presence started fading away slowly, Sima Shin grew hesitant. Chapter 245. He does not want you, but I do. Sima Shin knew that the disappearance of the snake's presence was not due to it being subjugated by Su Ming. It got sealed within Han Mountain Bell, just like how it had been previously sealed. Yet even though he knew about it, he became hesitant, and soon, that hesitance turned into cold detachment. Planting the berserker seed is the most important thing at the moment. The snake is in Su Ming's hands now. I might not have had much contact with him, but I can tell that he's a decisive person. He won't drag things out and hesitate to take action. If he can't subjugate the snake, then he'll definitely think of ways to kill it. If that's the case, since you're going to die either way, you might as well help me before you die. At least your death will be worthwhile then. Sima Shin suppressed the pain of losing the snake and a determined look appeared in his eyes. It's a pity the snake still hasn't grown up, forget it. Sima Shin lifted his right hand abruptly and slammed it against his chest. The cloth covering his chest instantly turned into shreds and disappeared, revealing a round blood-red picture on his chest. That blood-red picture looked like the sun, but if anyone took a closer look, they would see that there was a faint shadow of the rod insect within. It's a pity about that snake, but there's only a thin barren thread within it. It won't be able to return to its roots and become a barren. It's just a strange creature created by many barren threads from another barren treasure. This is just my guess, but perhaps the barren threads don't even exist. If I give up on this creature, the chances of me planting a berserker seed within Su Ming will be higher. This is worth it. Sima Shin's eyes sparkled, and once his right hand patted his chest, he quickly trailed his finger in the outlines of the round blood-red picture. As his finger trailed through the picture, cold air seeped out of his skin from the spots his finger passed by. Sima Shin's expression remained passive and detached. Soon, once his finger reached the end and arrived at where he started, the blood-red picture on his chest instantly started moving and eventually broke off from his skin. That blood-red circle was like a layer of skin. As it was slowly falling off his chest, many sticky threads could be seen connecting Sima Shin's skin to the picture. The sticky threads looked so repulsive that people would hurl just by looking at them, but Sima Shin's expression still remained passive and did not change. As the blood-red circle separated from his body, the threads were gradually cut off. When the circle eventually floated up before Sima Shin, all the threads had been cut off. A strange light appeared within Sima Shin's eyes and he bit his tongue to cough out blood. It fell on the blood-red circle that looked like skin and was quickly absorbed into it. Before Bai Su does what I want her to do, I must first create an emptiness within Su Ming's heart. Only by doing so will she have a higher chance of success. That snake will become the emptiness in his heart that will form the connection between me and Su Ming. The more you want to control the snake, the stronger that connection will be. Once he tries to control the snake and it dies, then he'll sink in deeper. The more he feels disappointed and regretful, the higher my chances will be to plant the hook. Sima Shin's lips twisted into a dark smile and he lifted his right hand once again to tap the center of his brows. Great art of heartless berserker seed. There was an indescribably ghastly tone in his voice as his words left his lips. The skin-like red circle before him instantly started burning. As it burned, the vague shadow of the rod insect in the red circle started trembling furiously and sounded as if it was letting out silent screams of pain. At the same time, in Su Ming's cave abode located on the 9th summit, the dispirited rod insect's body suddenly twisted within Han Mountain Bell. The insect, which was lying at death's gate, let out shrill, pained cries. As it cried out, the cruelty and viciousness in its eyes wavered, and the loyalty hidden within the depths of that cruelty became a look of one who's lost. White mist left the insect's body. There was no heat coming from that white mist, yet as it spread out, the rod insect's body started burning. So this is your master. Because he did not want you to be subjugated by me, he would rather kill you cruelly. Su Ming's voice echoed within Han Mountain Bell and seeped into the rod insect's soul. That insect possessed a high amount of intelligence and could understand Su Ming's words. The cruel light in its eyes grew dim and the hidden loyalty also became tainted by a thick veil of bewilderment. It was as if no matter how much intelligence it possessed, it just did not understand why its own master would want it dead. He wants you dead because you were captured by me. I don't know how long you've been with Sima Shin, but this must be the first time you were captured by someone. Even if I release you and you're captured the second or the third time, and even if the person who captured you isn't me, there is only one ending for you. And here you are, so loyal to a master like this. It's hilarious, but at the same time, I pity you. Every single one of Su Ming's words echoed within Han Mountain Bell like thunder and struck the rod insect's heart, making the cruelty in its eyes shatter completely, revealing the loyalty hidden underneath it. However, that loyalty was now tainted by bewilderment and also grief. Su Ming was watching all of it with his expression of cool detachment. However, his heart was shaken. He did not think the insect's intelligence would be so high. By the looks of it, it could even be said that its intelligence did not lose to Xiao Hong. However, since Xiao Hong was a fire ape, it was born with human-like intelligence. Yet the insect already possessed such a high amount of intelligence even though it was so tiny. It just went to show just how extraordinary this creature was. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. When the rod insect was clearly feeling shaken as its body was being burnt and its life force was quickly diminishing, Su Ming suddenly asked in a low growl, "Your former master wants to kill you. Are you still going to remain loyal to him?" His voice was like rumbling thunder. As it echoed in Han Mountain Bell, Su Ming's divine sense, which had surrounded the insect, immediately spotted a crack in the insect's mental defenses. The moment the crack appeared, the stone coins gathered outside Su Ming's body all jolted simultaneously and shattered into dust. They scattered out, and a large amount of spiritual aura surged out from the shattered stones. It rushed into the opened path in Su Ming's body like a wave, and once they circulated through the path once, they gathered in his head, allowing him to muster up an even stronger divine sense. When his divine sense rushed into Han Mountain Bell and fell upon the insect, it charged into the crack in its soul with a force strong enough to split apart bamboo and stormed straight into its soul. The instant he entered the insect's soul, Su Ming's divine sense noticed a gigantic, floating red picture of a circle inside the insect's clouded mental world. That thing was like human skin, or perhaps more accurately, it was human skin with the picture of a circle drawn on it. At that moment, it was floating in midair, burning. Su Ming could see the shadow of the rod snake within the red circle. It trembled, but did not resist. It stayed inside instead and simply allowed the skin to burn and render it weaker. In the span of a few breaths, most of the human skin turned into ashes and there was only a small segment left. By the looks of it, with just another few more breaths, it would completely disappear. Once the human skin completely disappeared, the rod snake's shadow inside would also disappear, and the strange insect would die. Sima Xin, you truly are wicked. Su Ming might have predicted this, but when he saw it happening with his own eyes, he still found himself gaining new knowledge of Sima Xin's ruthlessness. If he was Sima Xin and the rod insect was exchanged with Xiao Hong, he knew that he would not be able to do this. Su Ming did not hesitate. He gathered up that powerful divine sense within the insect's soul and crashed it into the burning human skin. The moment it touched the human skin, Su Ming's heart suddenly trembled, and he felt that something was off. At that moment, a dim light started blinking on his physical body's chest, which remained sitting in his cave abode. The source of the flickering dim light came from the mysterious black stone hanging on his neck. As the light flickered, Su Ming's divine sense trembled within the insect's soul. Even if he has to kill his own pet, that Sima Xin is still plotting against me, even though I don't know what he's planning, it's definitely nothing good. When Su Ming's divine sense faltered, another portion of the small segment left of the human skin burned away. By then, there was only a small part left. The rod snake had become incredibly weak and looked like its soul was about to shatter and scatter at any moment. Yet it seemed like it had lost all will to fight. It simply lay within the skin and waited for its death. There were only two paths lying before Su Ming right now. Either he would choose to save the rod insect and get caught in Sima Xin's trap, or he would give up on the insect. He was plotting against Sima Xin, and Sima Xin was also plotting against him. The two of them did not know of the other person's goals and all the remaining moves they had. Yet they were using this rod insect as a medium and were fighting against each other in a form that was different from a true, physical brawl. Su Ming only hesitated for a moment before he made his decision. He did not bother about Sima Xin's unknown plot against him and covered what little remained of the human skin with his divine sense before breaking through the fire and into the shadow of the rod insect that seemed to have lost all will to fight and had given into despair. Even if Sima Xin wants to use your death and force me into a trap, this is my experiment. Even if you have to die, you cannot die in his hands. The moment Su Ming's divine sense rushed in, the rod insect shuddered. He doesn't want you, but I do. A mighty voice traveled out from within Su Ming's divine sense and rushed into the rod insect's soul. Its soul immediately started trembling, and the shadow in the human skin lifted its head. The dark light within its eyes seemed to have become different. He doesn't want you, but I do. That sentence echoed within the highly intelligent rod insect's soul and made that something within its eyes gradually replace the dull look. With barely any form of resistance from the rod insect, Su Ming's divine sense left a deep brand on its soul. When he left the brand on its soul, the human skin had already burned to ashes. Yet the very moment before it was completely burnt to ashes, the shadow within the skin vanished. Right then, the human skin before the sitting Sima Xin on the first summit was also completely burnt to ashes. Yet his expression drastically changed and he stood up, as if he wanted to rush out of the first summit, but he stopped himself and clenched his fists. His expression turned incredibly dark, as if there was an anger within him strong enough to burn the heavens. How could it not be dead? He suddenly understood Su Ming's plans. He wanted to use Sima Xin and subjugate the strange snake through him. Chapter 246, Do you understand? Su Ming opened his eyes slowly on the ninth summit, and fatigue could be seen in his eyes. The act of leaving a brand in the insect's soul in itself was already tiring for his divine senses. Even with the help of the spiritual aura provided by the stone coins, due to that burning human skin blood picture of Sima Xin's, placing the brand on the insect made Su Ming feel drained and tired. Nonetheless, even though he was exhausted, there was still joy on his face. When he stretched out his right hand, there was a black little rod the size of a finger's segment lying on his palm silently. If he took a closer look, he would find that it was the strange rod-shaped insect-snake hybrid. The snake had its head lowered. If Su Ming did not look carefully, it would be difficult for him to see that the creature's eyes were also closed. There was an exhausted air coming from it that was similar to Su Ming's own exhaustion, and along with it was also a strong sense of feebleness. It was clear that the things that had happened just now not only injured this highly intelligent snake physically, but mentally as well. Yet Su Ming could clearly feel that the snake was different after it went through the process of changing owners. Its soul had just gone through a change, and there was an intense, malicious killing intent that Su Ming felt as if he could touch spreading out faintly from its body. When you wake up from your sleep, then I will have another trump card by my side. Su Ming mumbled and stroked the rod insect with his left hand. The insect did not move. The struggles and resistance it once showed could no longer be found. After being silent for a moment, Su Ming placed the insect into Han Mountain Bell once again. He might still be sealing up the creature, but the meaning behind his action was different this time. Previously, he had sealed it up to capture it, now, he was protecting it. He would use Han Mountain Bell's might to protect the incredibly weakened snake and allow it ample time to recover until the moment it fully awakened. Once he put away Han Mountain Bell, Su Ming took a deep breath. The world outside was darkening once again. Before long, darkness would completely fall upon the land. Su Ming stood up and walked out of his cave abode. The moment he got out, a cold blast of wind blew against his face and lifted his hair and clothes. It made Su Ming feel some of his fatigue leave his body. He breathed in the chilling air and a cold sensation spread into his body until it filled him from head to toe. Yet this chill only affected his body. Su Ming's heart remained warm because he was standing on the ninth summit, his home. When Ziche saw Su Ming walking closer to where he sat not too far away, he immediately stood up and bowed respectfully towards him. "Greetings, Uncle Master Su." Su Ming did not speak. He looked at the world in the distance and at the dim light in the horizon that seemed like a bonfire that was about to be extinguished. He looked at the light as it was gradually swallowed up by the darkness, and he continued watching until the world turned completely dark. There was not a hint of impatience on Ziche's face. Instead, he simply stood by the side respectfully and waited for Su Ming's command. He had already thought things through thoroughly. In these 3 years, he would make a place for himself in the ninth summit, because he had already understood how the ninth summit worked. Time trickled by, and after a long while of Su Ming staring at the darkness in the distance, his voice came forth slowly from within the darkness, "Who is Bai Su?" Su Ming hadn't asked about Bai Su previously, even though that question had been lingering in his heart. Yet now, when he was fighting against Sima Xin with the rod insect acting as the medium, he sensed Sima Xin's plans and a vague speculation formed in his mind. Ziche was silent for a moment before he spoke respectfully. "Uncle Master Su, Bai Su is a disciple of Freezing Sky Clan's 7th summit. She rarely speaks and I don't know much about her. But from what I understand about Sima Xin, he wouldn't have gotten into contact with an ordinary disciple without reason. The girl only has mediocre potential. If Sima Xin got into contact with her, then there must be something unusual about her, perhaps it's her status." Su Ming thought for a few moments before he turned around and walked off the platform he was standing on. Ziche quickly followed behind him, and the two of them walked through the ninth summit at midnight. Besides the moaning sounds of the wind, there were no other sounds at this time. It was quiet all around them. Su Ming's footsteps were unhurried, but there seemed to be a rhythm every single time his foot landed. Ziche followed behind him, and the more he looked, the more shocked he became. "As I thought, all the people in the ninth summit are monsters. Su Ming's walk alone is strange. If I look at it for a long period of time, I'll start feeling as if my mind is being stepped on." Ziche licked his lips and eagerness appeared in his eyes. As the two of them continued walking, an attentive look suddenly appeared on Ziche's face and he turned his head swiftly towards a dark place not too far in the distance. Just now, he seemed to have seen a person floating by in the corner of his eye. "That's my second senior brother." Before Ziche could make any sort of warning, Su Ming's calm voice had already traveled into his ears. Ziche was stunned, but before he could wrap his mind around it, he immediately narrowed his eyes. He just saw a strange figure floating by from that dark spot not too far away. That figure suddenly stopped. Whoever it was, he or she lowered their body and looked around before lowering their head and grabbing a few plants. Then that person floated to another spot. That figure was like a ghost, and all those who saw it would feel primal fear blossoming in their hearts. Ziche watched the figure's actions. It silently floated around, making Ziche's skin crawl. It was night at the moment, and it was quiet all around them. The sudden appearance of such a strange person, and especially after learning about his identity, made Ziche feel shaken. Ziche took a deep breath. His gaze fell on Su Ming, who was still walking forward slowly, not turning his head around. Ziche quickly caught up to him, and after a moment of hesitation, he asked in a whisper, what is second Uncle Master doing?" "He's stealing his own plants," Su Ming stated calmly. Very soon, he arrived at Hu Zi's cave abode. Su Ming had already promised Chen Shang to help her persuade Hu Zi. Since he had received Chen Zhang's gifts, then there was no way he would forget about this task. Stealing his own plants. There was a strange look on Ziche's face as he walked over to the cave, along with bafflement. The ninth summit was becoming even more difficult to figure out to him. Su Ming did not hear his third senior brother's snores as he stood outside Hu Zi's cave. He went in and saw that the cave was empty. His third senior brother had gone somewhere. Su Ming felt the beginnings of a headache blooming in his head. He could already imagine it. Whenever nighttime came and Hu Zi did not have anything else to do, he would definitely go out and explore, with that mysterious smile on his face. Right now, he would have gone to some other summit and would be crouched in a corner with a grin as he peeked on other people. Ziche was standing behind Su Ming. When he saw that the cave abode was empty, he did not think too much into it, but when he saw Su Ming frown, a thought suddenly struck his head and he remembered the rumors regarding Hu Zi circulating within Freezing Sky Clan. When he remembered these rumors, a shudder ran through Ziche's body and his expression became weirder. Su Ming walked out of the cave with a frown, then lifted his head to look at the night sky. After a moment of silence, he walked into the distance. He did not speak throughout the way, and Ziche too remained silent behind him. The two of them walked silently for about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn before Su Ming suddenly stopped. At the same time, a soft giggle that made Ziche's hair stand on end came from a place not too far away. That giggle was like the shrieks of nocturnal birds, and in the quiet midnight, that sound was incredibly distinct. That bone-chilling giggle was followed by a voice that seemed to be moved by something. "As expected, I'm just the smartest person around. Second senior brother, oh second senior brother, I won't tell you just who's stealing your flowers. Ah, it's not a good thing being too smart. Look at me, I'm too smart, that's why I'm lonely, too lonely." Ziche's mind was blank. Naturally, he had recognized the voice to be Hu Zi's, but he just could not tell how Hu Zi was smart. In the midst of his confusion, Ziche stole an instinctive look towards Su Ming. Right before his eyes, he saw Su Ming's frown disappear, and he bent his tall and straight back, then with his back lowered, he moved softly forward. Ziche's mind was already in a mess. The Su Ming right before his eyes seemed to have changed from what he usually saw. That posture of his with his back bent made Ziche gulp a few times, but he then imitated the actions and moved forward quietly with a crouched back. Before long, a large stone appeared before them. Ziche saw a man crouching behind the stone like a tiger with his head stretched out as he looked out from the edge of the stone. Su Ming was already used to Hu Zi's actions. With his back arched, he approached the stone and crouched down beside Hu Zi. His senior brother turned around and cast a glance at Su Ming. He was just about to speak when he saw Su Ming lifting his right index finger and making a shushing sound with a bitter smile. Hu Zi's eyes sparkled and an approving look appeared on his face before he whispered, "Not bad, youngest junior brother. Looks like you've adopted my good habit, and now I won't be lonely anymore. I'll take you around and let you see every corner of Freezing Sky Clan." Ziche was also crouching by the side. Curiosity was burning within him, and he could not help himself from lifting his head and looking out the edge of the stone. The moment he saw what was there, he blinked and found himself speechless. There was a frozen river lying between the mountains behind the stone, and there was a sunken area in the middle of the ice. It was about 100 feet in breadth, and there was an ice block that was about a few dozen feet tall standing in it. There was a dim light shining in the ice, and he could vaguely see a woman's figure on it. She seemed to be bathing there. As the woman bathed, she kept looking around her carefully. Since only the woman's back was in sight, they could only see her long hair, not her face, and since the view was a little muddled, it would have been difficult for anyone to see her face anyway. What is this?" A baffled look appeared in Ziche's eyes. He simply couldn't wrap his head around why this illusion would appear on the 100 feet tall ice. He also instinctively looked around him and found the area to be in silence. It was clear that no one was around bathing. "Heh, this is your grandpa Hu's greatest invention. So what if the 7th summit has a tight defense? I don't even have to go there and I can still see what I want from here." There was a proud look on Hu Zi's face, and he seemed delighted with himself. Ziche was stunned and the question slipped off his tongue before he even knew it. "Uncle Master Hu, since you can see it here, then why don't you just go out and watch by the ice instead of crouching down here?" When Hu Zi heard his question, he immediately glared at him condescendingly. "This is the only way you'll feel as if you're peeking, do you understand?" Ziche laughed bitterly. For some reason, that woman's blurred-out back was somewhat familiar, but he just could not place a finger on it. When he looked at it once again, the reflection of the woman on the ice turned around and the side view of her face, though still blurred out, was revealed. The moment her face came into view, Ziche's jaw fell slack and veins began popping on his face. Chapter 247, Big Sister. Big Sister. Veins popped out on Ziche's face and he stood up swiftly. Then with one step, he instantly arrived beside the ice and threw a punch at it. A loud bang rang through the air, and the ice instantly shattered into pieces. The shadow on the ice also disappeared as the ice shattered. Yet the moment it disappeared, the woman in it seemed to have noticed something and she turned her head as if she was looking at something. Hu Zi was furious. He widened his eyes and glared at Ziche, then rushed out like a tiger, roaring, "How dare you break the treasure your grandpa Hu created after all the blood, sweat, and tears he poured out? I'm going to teach you a lesson." Su Ming had a strange expression on his face. He respected Hu Zi's weird quirk. He was not entirely sure whether this was just his imagination, but when Ziche broke the ice, he seemed to have heard two sighs traveling softly from around him. "That's my sister. My sister." Ziche was also furious and he shouted at Hu Zi, who was rushing towards him. Hu Zi was originally livid, but when he heard Ziche's words, he was momentarily stunned, then his anger faded away instantly. He also came to an abrupt halt even though he was charging forth at high speed previously. He scratched his head and an embarrassed look appeared on his face, but it quickly turned into nonchalance. "Oh well, your grandpa Hu has a big heart. So what if it's broken? I can just make another one." Ziche's breathing quickened and he glared at Hu Zi. More veins popped out on his face. Hu Zi was feeling slightly guilty, which prompted him to quickly speak, all right. I won't look at your sister anymore." "Do you really mean it?" Ziche immediately asked. "Of course, there are plenty of other people in Freezing Sky Clan. If I say I won't peek at her anymore, then I won't," Hu Zi hastily promised. "But don't tell your sister." Ziche's face was dark as he looked at Hu Zi's guilty expression, and he could not help but start laughing bitterly. However, cold sweat had already broken out on his body and he instinctively looked at Su Ming. Su Ming had a strange look on his face. He did not bother about Ziche and Hu Zi. Instead, once he got closer, he walked around the place as if he was looking for something. His strange actions immediately attracted Hu Zi and Ziche's attention. The two of them also started looking around the place. An excited look appeared on Hu Zi's face, and with light footsteps he quickly got closer to Su Ming, then whispered softly, "Youngest junior brother, what are you looking for?" While asking, he started looking around the place. Su Ming's footsteps faltered and his gaze fell on the frozen river before him. After a long while, he shook his head and looked at Hu Zi. "Third senior brother, could you also not look at Chen Shang anymore?" Once Hu Zi heard it, he immediately nodded, but soon, realization dawned on his face and he grinned mysteriously at Su Ming. Su Ming was just about to speak when he saw that grin on Hu Zi's face. I know, hee, youngest junior brother, you don't have to explain anything. There's nothing your third senior brother doesn't understand. Your third senior brother is the smartest person in the 9th summit." Su Ming could only laugh bitterly. He knew that he could not explain himself out of this, and decided not to even try. Instead, he simply wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed towards Hu Zi. "Why are you being so courteous? We're under the same master. By the way, youngest junior brother, my entering dream was great, right? I chased Sima Shin away, didn't I? Heh. Don't you worry, youngest junior brother. I haven't mastered entering dream yet. Once I master it, it'll be even more powerful." As Hu Zi spoke, a proud look appeared on his face and he patted his chest. He suddenly lifted his head and looked at the weather. "Youngest junior brother, I won't be talking with you anymore. It's almost time now, so I have to hurry to the 8th summit. Do you want to come with me?" Hu Zi looked towards Su Ming, and once he saw Su Ming shake his head, he flew up quickly and turned into a long arc that charged into the darkness in the distance. He soon disappeared, but no matter what, his departing figure still gave Su Ming the impression that he was running away. When he saw Zi Che's controlled anger, he understood that his third senior brother was feeling embarrassed and guilty after being caught red-handed, which was why he chose to leave so hurriedly. "Do not do this again. It doesn't matter whether he is right or wrong. If you do this again, remember that I still lack an ingredient to make my medicine." Su Ming turned around and cast Zi Che a cold glance. Zi Che trembled and felt a little upset, but when he saw the cold look in Su Ming's eyes, he lowered his head and obeyed. "That ice was blurred out and you couldn't see anything. Besides, my senior brother has already said that he won't peek at your sister anymore, so let it be." Su Ming walked away as he spoke. Zi Che breathed out a sigh of relief. He was not an unreasonable person. Su Ming may have said those words, but he did not do anything to him due to his actions just now. He only gave him a warning to not do it again. This in itself was a form of respect towards Zi Che. When Su Ming and Zi Che left, a person suddenly charged towards the place that was now filled with shattered ice. That person came to the place and looked at it carefully and sneakily before quickly crouching down and taking away all the ice shards. With his back arched, the person quickly left the place. That tall and built figure was, of course, Hu Zi. "I'm so unlucky. This is the first time I made this, and I was having fun watching, but who knew I'd meet up with her little brother? How could I forget about this? Oh well, I'll just have to be more careful next time," Hu Zi mumbled and quickly left. A short moment after Hu Zi left, the space above the frozen river where Su Ming was staring at previously suddenly distorted and a handsome man gradually walked out of the distortion. There was also a hint of embarrassment on his face, but even so, he still looked as gentle as spring wind. This person was naturally Su Ming's second senior brother. Once he appeared, he let out a few fake coughs. "I was almost found out by youngest junior brother. It's all the third's fault. Why did he have to make something so nice?" Second senior brother mumbled under his breath and left the place hastily. A moment after Su Ming's second senior brother left, distorted ripples appeared once again in the space in this area that was about a few 100 feet wide. An old man wearing a flowery robe walked out from within the distortion. The old man walked out with one brisk step, then patted his robes in a relaxed manner before placing his hands behind his back and walking towards the top of the mountain calmly. While his expression might be passive, pride could be seen within his eyes. The third did a good job. He made something interesting. It's a pity it was broken, but with my third disciple's personality, he'll make another one in a few days, and it'll be even sturdier than the previous one so that no one can break it with just one punch. It's a pity, but the fourth has really sharp senses. He almost found out where the second was hiding. Heh, but they're still not good enough to find me, the old man mumbled under his breath as he walked away proudly. That old man was Tian Xiezi. Tian Xiezi, who was wearing a flowery long robe. Time passed by gradually in this peace and quiet. Hu Zi continued creating things and peeking at other people, and Su Ming's second senior brother continued planting flowers in the day and stealing them at night, as well as occasionally running into Hu Zi looking at the ice he created. Of course, sometimes Tian Xiezi would also appear during the night, dressed in a flowery robe. Very soon, 2 months passed by. During these 2 months, Su Ming and Sima Shin's battle had been spread throughout Freezing Sky Clan by those who had witnessed it that day. Gradually, almost all the disciples from the other 8 summits knew that there was a person in the 9th summit that was strong enough to fight against Sima Shin. They also learned that this person was a divine general of awakening. His name quickly spread through Freezing Sky Clan, and slowly, due to his battle with Sima Shin, Su Ming's name appeared on Freezing Sky Clan's Great Frozen Plains ranking boards. He was ranked 9th on Great Frozen Plains ranking boards, replacing Zi Che. The reason why he was ranked 9th was because there was no outcome to Su Ming and Sima Shin's battle. The people might have some understanding towards Su Ming's power, but they did not know the details. When he fought against Sima Shin, they could also tell that Sima Shin was clearly stronger than Su Ming. A lot of them felt that it was a pity that the two of them did not manage to execute their final attacks in the battle. During these 2 months, besides Su Ming's name spreading through Freezing Sky Clan, the school was also preparing for something big hurriedly and in secret. That event was the Sky Mist Shaman Hunt that only occurred once every decade. There was only less than 10 months left until the start of the hunt. Sky Mist Shaman Hunt was a big event within Freezing Sky Clan that was already considered a common practice among the disciples. The event occurred once every decade, and the disciples that took part in the event would differ in number from thousands to tens of thousands every single time. Similarly, Western Sea Clan, which belonged to the other big tribe in the land of South Morning, Western Sea, would also send out disciples and fight against the shamans in the battle that occurred once every decade. At that time, once Sky Mist Shaman Hunt began, the disciples of the 2 clans would frighten off the shamans in Sky Mist Barrier and also gather a set number of people to venture out of Sky Mist Barrier and invade certain territories of the shaman tribe. Each Sky Mist Shaman Hunt would last for a year. That year would be a bloody and grueling test as well as an ordeal for most of those who joined the battle. During that year, the people would know whether these swords, which were the disciples, would break or shine with a brilliant glint. However, big-scale battles did not happen for all Sky Mist Shaman Hunts. Since a long time ago till now, there were only a dozen shaman hunts which were incredibly devastating. The rest were actually rather mild battles. However, the battle this year would be significantly different from all the previous battles. The Sky Mist Shaman Hunt 10 months later would be a giant battle that only happened once every century. The Sky Mist Shaman Hunts that only occurred once every decade were small battles, yet after 10 of such battles came the battle that would only occur once every century, and the scale of that battle would be much greater than of a regular shaman hunt. This was a rule set by the 2 big tribes in the land of South Morning a long time ago. The reason as to why the battles were held so regularly with a large-scale battle occurring once every century was because they wanted to know at all times just how quickly the shaman tribes outside Sky Mist were increasing their power. They wanted to know whether there were any shockingly powerful people there, wanted to know whether they had any new spells, wanted to know whether there were any new shamans over there. All this information was the main purpose for the battles that occurred once every decade. There were plenty of disciples who had joined the Sky Mist Shaman Hunt multiple times within Freezing Sky Clan, but there were also those who had never joined the battle. However, most of the disciples were familiar with this event. During the 10 months, those who wanted to enter the battle would isolate themselves to train and make preparations. In the 2 months of peace and quiet in the 9th summit, there were also certain things that happened, and these things were not considered peaceful. Zi Che's older sister had come to the mountain multiple times with her anger directed straight at Hu Zi. At that moment, Su Ming was sitting on the platform outside his cave abode, under the clear sky. As he sat there, his right hand was drawing on the drawing board placed before him. His actions were very slow, but there was also a feeling of age gradually seeping out from his fingers and appearing on the drawing board as he drew each stroke. He was copying Sima Shin's sword slash. During these 2 months, he had kept copying Sima Shin's sword slash so that he could find that feeling he had in the beginning. Ziche was by his side and totally absorbed in watching Su Ming's actions. It was as if he was trying to search for his own epiphany in those strokes. Yet at that very moment, Sun Dahu, get your *SS down here. A woman's chilling voice sliced through the air from beyond the 9th summit. You witch, why are you just targeting me? Your little brother also saw you at that time, even my youngest junior brother Su Ming saw you. Hu Zi's voice traveled forth, muffled, and with a hitch that suggested he was almost in tears. He sounded really upset. Ziche instantly looked as if he was caught in an awkward situation, and Su Ming lifted his head with a bitter smile on his lips. Chapter 248, I'll draw for you. Ziche, you little rascal, it's a complete waste for me to have fought for you when you were bullied last time. If you're still a man, then get Sun Dahu here now. The woman's voice as she hissed out through her teeth clenched quickly came from beyond the 9th summit. 2 long arcs whistled through the air in the sky. One of them wore a yellow robe and had an oval-shaped face. Although her face was twisted in anger, it simply gave her a different vibe of beauty. There was a woman behind her. That woman was also beautiful, but there was a look on her face that suggested she was holding back her words. There was also a strange look in her eyes. That woman was Han Kangzi. Ziche scratched his head and quickly got up, but he had no idea what he should be saying in this situation, so he really was just standing there awkwardly. Sis, don't call me sis, I don't have a brother like you. The woman glared at Ziche and her gaze fell upon Su Ming. Oh, if it isn't Uncle Master Su, the woman said with a chilling laugh. Su Ming could feel the beginnings of a headache blooming. The woman's name was Ziyan, and she was Ziche's sister. During these 2 months, she had been coming here often to search for Hu Zi. He managed to dodge her a few times, but once she found him, something happened between them, and after that, Hu Zi started hiding himself deep in the mountain. They only knew that he was in the mountain, but it was difficult for them to know where he was hiding. Only when he was forced into a corner would he start shouting, but his words floated in the air, making it hard for anyone to determine the source of his voice. There was even one time where Hu Zi thought it was unfair that the woman only came looking for him to teach him a lesson when everyone else had also seen her. That was why he shouted out those words. After a few times, the woman's attention slowly spread out. Su Ming could only feel resigned, laugh bitterly, and get a headache out of this. The woman's personality was also hard to grasp. Once she diverted her attention towards them, she made an absurd request of Su Ming, and if he did not fulfill her request, she would continue pestering him. Fortunately, Su Ming was not the instigator of this. Once he avoided her a few times, Ziyan once again focused her attention on searching for the instigator of this entire incident, Sun Dahu. Disciple niece Ziyan. Su Ming looked at the raging Ziyan and also saw Han Kangzi standing behind her. He blinked instinctively. Han Kangzi pretended not to see him and turned her head in another direction. What is it that you want of me, Uncle Master Su? Are you still not satisfied by what you saw? Ziyan let out a cold harumph and walked towards the 9th summit elegantly. She stood on the platform outside Su Ming's cave, and as wind blew past her, her black hair was lifted up, which also brought a nice fragrance that wafted into Su Ming's nose. About the thing you asked, it's not as if I can't do it, but you see, since your Uncle Master who is the instigator, if he can fulfill your request, then I'll naturally do so as well. It was not as if Su Ming was not good at talking, it was just that he chose to remain quiet when he came to the land of South Morning. Right now, he had already found the warmth that gave him the feeling of home on the 9th summit, and his manner of speaking when he was in Dark Mountain started returning a little. You, Ziyan glared at him. Just as she was about to speak, Han Kangzi let out a faint cough beside her. Ziyan cast a deep look at Su Ming before she snorted and said, I'll put this aside first for my junior sister Fang. Just you wait until I find that Sun Dahu. When she said it, Ziyan leapt up and started moving around the 9th summit. The 9th summit was a strange place. There were no runes that protected the mountain. Anyone could enter as they pleased, but only if they were allowed to do so. If the people in the ninth summit did not permit their entry, those who entered would end up like Ziche. However, it could be said that everyone in the ninth summit had wronged Ziyan. Tian Xiezi was sly and had gone into isolation to train a long time ago. Since this thing had nothing to do with Su Ming's eldest senior brother, he also enjoyed his peace and quiet. His second senior brother had been hanging around the place often during these 2 months and was busy with tending to his plants. Every single time he saw Ziyan, he would give a smile as gentle as the spring wind before giving her a nod. Once Ziyan left to search for Sun Dahu, who had gone into hiding in the ninth summit, Han Kangzi descended from the sky and stood on the platform. Ziche could tell that these two knew each other since a long time ago, and coupled with the things that were now circulating in Freezing Sky Clan's great frozen plains regarding Su Ming, they made Ziche lower his head and take a few steps back and leave the place. White clouds covered the blue sky. The wind brought about a chill as it blew past the two people. As the wind lifted some locks of their hair, it also gave a sense of beauty to the serenity in the place. "You seem to be avoiding me," Su Ming said, looking at Fang Kang Lan with a smile. "I'm not." Fang Kang Lan did not look at Su Ming. Instead, she stood on the platform and looked at the blue sky in the distance. "You've come to this place with your senior sister Ziyan many times during these 2 months, but this is the first time you chose to stay alone." In Su Ming's eyes, Fang Kang Lan was like a serene snow lotus in the wind. "I came here before," Fang Kang Lan whispered. "Thank you." Su Ming sat down and his gaze fell upon the white clouds in the sky. "What for?" The motion when Fang Kang Lan turned her head to the side was very beautiful. Sunlight shone on her, and he could see some of the fine hair framing her face. "Thank you for worrying about me when Ziche came here, and thank you for warning me when I was fighting against Sima Xin." Su Ming picked up the drawing board next to him and tapped it with his right hand. A faint banging sound echoed in the air, and a thin layer of powder fell away from the drawing board. "I know that you should have guessed Sima Xin's goal, that's why I didn't come to warn you again." Fang Kang Lan smiled faintly. There was a hint of something Su Ming understood but was still a little uncertain about in her smile. "A berserker son, A chilling glare appeared briefly in Su Ming's eyes. If he could still not figure out Sima Xin's goals, then he would not be the Su Ming who arrived alone in the land of South Morning and made it to this point in life. Fang Kang Lan hesitated for a moment before she said softly, "I don't know what else Sima Xin is planning to do, but from what I understand about him, once he makes up his mind about something, then he won't give up. You have to be more careful." Once she finished speaking, she lifted her right hand and smoothed down her hair, which had become messy due to the wind. She tucked some locks behind her ear and turned around to no longer look at Su Ming. It was just as Su Ming said, she was indeed avoiding him, because every single time she met his gaze, she would feel her heartbeat suddenly quicken. "Don't move," Su Ming suddenly said. Fang Kang Lan was stunned and looked at Su Ming curiously. "Stay that way, let me draw your picture." Su Ming picked up his drawing board and looked at Fang Kang Lan, then he drew a stroke on the drawing board with his right hand. Red colored Fang Kang Lan's cheeks. She bit her bottom lip and looked at Su Ming as she maintained her posture of tucking her hair behind her ear. Her dress fluttered in the wind, and the blue sky and white clouds behind her acted as her background. Not only did the wind make her dress flutter, it also made her hair float diagonally. It was a beautiful picture. It was as if time slowed down all of a sudden. A woman's face gradually appeared on the drawing board under Su Ming's fingers. Fang Kang Lan's fluttering heart slowly calmed down. She kept her gaze on Su Ming and what entered her vision first was the scar underneath his eye. When she saw the scar, Fang Kang Lan's heart clenched in pain. The two of them did not speak. In this piece, one of them drew, and the other watched. Admiration appeared on Ziche's face as he stood in the distance. He might not have heard what Su Ming and Fang Kang Lan said to each other, but when he saw Su Ming drawing Fang Kang Lan, his admiration towards Su Ming grew to an incredibly high point. As expected of Uncle Master Su, when he fought against Sima Xin, his killing intent was suffocating, and he had an intimidating presence. Now, he can draw so tenderly and make a woman so bashful. When will I ever be like that? Ziche sighed deeply. He shook his head and closed his eyes slightly as if he was thinking about something. He has just fought Sima 2 months ago, now he sits drawing for a woman. If the day comes that I can do this, what should my next line be? Ziche frowned. During these 2 months, as he continued observing the odd eccentricities of the people in the Ninth Summit, he gained an epiphany and believed that perhaps these eccentricities were what made them so different from the others. That was why he also tried looking for a weird quirk for himself, which led to something like this happening, where he would start making poetry when he was deeply moved. While Ziche was thinking about what his next line should be, while Su Ming was looking at Fang Kanglan and drawing her second senior brother, who had been tending to his flowers on the Ninth Summit, lifted his head and looked towards the direction of Su Ming's cave. His eyes also sparkled brilliantly. Youngest junior brother, thank you. Second senior brother suddenly uttered these abstruse words before quickly standing up and letting out a few fake coughs. Then he disappeared without a trace. On another spot on the Ninth Summit, Su Ming's second senior brother suddenly appeared. He first smoothed out his robes and took a few deep breaths before placing his hands behind his back and lifting his head to look at the sky. Yet he soon moved his body to the side and let the sunlight fall on his face as he looked up. Soon, he frowned again and waved his left hand by his side. Immediately, a light breeze blew past him and made his robes and long hair flutter in the air. With the wind constantly around him, the second senior brother looked at the sky and remained still. Before long, Ziyan appeared on the stairs not too far into the distance. She had already gone to a few places, but she simply could not find Sun Dahu. She might be furious, but she could not do anything to vent her anger. As she continued walking forward, a gentle voice suddenly reached her ears. Miss Ziyan. Ziyan's footsteps faltered. When she turned around, she saw Su Ming's second senior brother standing nearby. The very instant she saw him, shock appeared on her face. She saw Su Ming's second senior brother's hair dancing in the wind. She also saw his long robes fluttering in the wind. She even saw him positioning the side of his face towards her and with his hands behind his back look at the white clouds in the sky. When sunlight fell on his face, it made him seem different from how he usually was. Ziche felt her skin crawl. She did not know what had happened to this person, so she quickly took a few steps back and spoke softly. Greetings, second uncle master of the Ninth Summit. Chapter 249, Purple Robe. Miss Ziyan, I'm not that much older than you are. Let's talk as equals. You may call me senior brother Hua. Ziwa was momentarily taken aback, but then opened her mouth as if to speak. Miss Ziyan. Su Ming's second senior brother's face grew more stern. I said that I would bear the responsibility for his wrongs. How about this? I'll follow you to the 7th summit and punish myself to protect you for 3 years. I'll use these 3 years to compensate for Huzi's mistake. Once the second senior brother finished speaking, he sighed. If Huzi was by his side and saw the gentleness on his face along with the persistence in his words, perhaps, just perhaps, he would be very touched. Senior brother Hua, there's no need for that. Ziyan felt that she could not handle him and took a few steps back. Are 3 years not enough? All right then, 10 years. I'll punish myself to go to the 7th summit and protect you for 10 years. Second senior brother was just about to take a step forward, but after a short moment of hesitation, he did not move, because the sunlight in the spot 1 step away from where he was right then was not as bright as the spot where he stood right now. Ah, you really don't have to do that, Ziyan said nervously. Su Ming's second senior brother's enthusiasm was beginning to scare her. Miss Ziyan, in truth, second senior brother looked at Ziyan and a grave expression appeared on his face. In truth, I was also among the people who watched you. That's why, you must accept my apology. When Ziyan heard his words, she was stunned before a bitter smile appeared on her lips. Senior brother Hua, please don't joke around. I know that you weren't there. Let's leave it as it is, I'll be leaving now. While speaking, Ziyan quickly moved back towards the stairs in an attempt to leave as quickly as possible. This place was making her uncomfortable all over her body. Miss Ziyan, I was really there. When he saw that Ziyan was about to leave, second senior brother took a few steps forward quickly. Let's leave it at that. I'll be leaving now, Ziyan did not even turn back and quickly ran down the mountain through the stairs feeling incredibly flustered. By the looks of it, if second senior brother chased after her, she would immediately jump into the air and fly away. No, second senior brother took a leap and instantly appeared before the fleeing Ziyan. Miss Ziyan, you have a heart of gold, but I am a person who repents with my actions. If you will not accept my apology, then you can request 3 things from me. You can come to me at any time and ask me to fulfill your requests, second senior brother stated sternly. All right, I'll remember it. Senior brother Wah, I'm leaving first. You don't have to send me off, in fact, please don't send me off. Ziyan quickly nodded her head and flew up just as hastily. She avoided Su Ming's second senior brother and charged out into the distance. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared without a trace. Just as Ziyan was scared off by Su Ming's second senior brother's enthusiasm and fled quickly in a flustered state without even bothering about Han Kangzi, Su Ming's right hand made the last stroke on his drawing board where he sat outside his cave abode. When he finished drawing, Su Ming held out the drawing board to Han Kangzi. A baffled look appeared momentarily on her face when she looked at it. After a long while, she placed the drawing board down, cast a glance at Su Ming, then spun around with a calm look on her face and turned into a long arc and left. The drawing board was empty. Those who could see it would certainly see it, but those who couldn't, no matter how they forced themselves to see it, they would still not be able to see anything. Su Ming did not know whether Han Kangzi saw the drawing. He looked at her leaving figure, then closed his eyes after a long while. When he opened them once again, they were as calm as water. He picked up the drawing board silently and once again immersed himself in copying Sima Shin's sword slash. With every single copy, he would gain a slightly better understanding of it. These experiences gradually built up and slowly allowed him to sense the might of that one stroke he had made previously. 3 days later, Hu Zi came out of his hiding place silently. When he saw that Ziyan seemed to no longer bother him, he became pleased with himself once again and spent his days in his cave abode drinking, and as he did so, he would also mumble under his breath and fiddle with some ice shards, grouping them together. He would even occasionally let out some weird giggles as he did so. Second senior brother tended to his plants as he usually did, but he also gained a new hobby for himself. He would go to the spots where the sun was the brightest and position himself so that sunlight would fall on the side of his face. It was as if he was extremely fond of this particular action. Their master, Tian Xiezi, also walked out when Ziyan no longer appeared on the 9th summit. Every morning, the people in the 9th summit would hear long-lasting howls from the top of the mountain. Those roars were like thunder and rumbled in the air. Tian Xiezi would always rise up to roar and fly in different directions to do something, though no one knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he would usually only return by noon. As time passed by, Su Ming learned that this was his master's hobby. At the same time, as another month went by, Su Ming noticed that his master, Tian Xiezi, had another unique quirk. He only learned about this quirk through his second senior brother's words and his own observations. Look, master is wearing white again today. He should be flying north. Second senior brother sat beside Su Ming on his platform outside his cave abode. At that moment, second senior brother had his head lifted towards the sky, looking at the top of mountain. He spoke as if he was deeply moved by his master's actions. A rumbling roar came from the top of the mountain, and Tian Xiezi, who was dressed in white, flew towards the north. If master is in a good mood in the morning, he'll do this. Youngest junior brother, you must get used to it. Master is wearing red today, he'll fly to the west. Hu Zi was also sitting beside his second senior brother this time. There was a pot of wine in his hand. He mumbled under his breath, master is wearing black today, so he'll definitely fly to the south, and did not even bother looking at the sky. Then just as he said, Tian Xiezi flew towards the south from the summit, dressed in black. Master is dressed in green today and is also wearing a green hat. Just you wait, his mood is bad today, so he'll fly east. Second senior brother did not even bother lifting his head when he stated that softly, holding a green plant in his hands. When Su Ming heard it as he was still drawing Sima Shin's sword slash, He instinctively lifted his head to look, and a stunned look appeared on his face. Rumbling sounds came from the mountaintop, and then Tian Shiezi appeared in the air dressed in green and a green hat, and flew north. This scene immediately made Hu Zi, who was drinking, stunned, and he quickly rubbed his eyes. That's not right. Why did Master fly north? Second senior brother also lifted his head and his expression suddenly became grave. Something happened to Master. When Ziche heard this and saw the changes in expressions of second and third senior brothers while meditating not too far away, having gained a deeper understanding of the weirdness in the ninth summit over the past few days, his heart immediately started racing against his chest. He had a feeling that he was about to discover some sort of secret. At that moment, the green-robed Tian Shiezi suddenly faltered in the sky, in the act of flying towards the north. He stopped for a moment in midair as if he was mumbling something under his breath before he turned around and flew east. Hu Zi rolled his eyes and lifted his wine pot to continue drinking with a look as if he was displeased with Tian Shiezi's actions. Su Ming frowned and cast a glance at his second senior brother. He saw a hint of seriousness that was rarely seen in his second senior brother's eyes. I remember that the last time Master made a mistake like this was 15 years ago. Could it be that his purple-robed self is about to appear once again? Second senior brother took a deep breath and looked at Su Ming and Hu Zi. Purple robe. Su Ming also looked at his second senior brother. Chapter 250. He Feng's Change. Every single time Master appears before us in purple robes, there will be much bloodshed. That is something that is very difficult for me to forget. Second senior brother let out a long sigh before standing up and taking a light step forward. He let sunlight fall on the side of his face as he placed his hands behind his back and lifted his head to look at the sky with a nostalgic look on his face. Hu Zi was looking at his second senior brother dumbly. He gulped and mumbled under his breath. He had no idea when this new weird quirk of liking to stand under the sun and facing others with the side of his face was acquired by second senior brother. Ziche became nervous as well, sitting not too far since he rarely saw his uncle Master Hua make a face like this. Su Ming cast a glance at his second senior brother and lowered his head to continue copying Sima Shin's sword slash on the drawing board before him. That memory is something that I will never forget. It was 15 years ago, during a night where the moon did not shine and the winds were strong. Second senior brother lifted his head and a complicated look appeared on his face. At that time, eldest senior brother was still in isolation, training himself, and I was meditating in my cave abode when suddenly, second senior brother's words faltered and he swept his gaze across Hu Zi and Ziche before finally settling on Su Ming. When he saw that Su Ming had also lifted his head, second senior brother's voice rang out in the air once again. Master was dressed in purple when he suddenly entered my cave abode. I will never forget the very first question Master asked me at that time. He asked me whether I knew how to use arts to fight. At that time, I answered yes, and in the end, remember this, if either of you sees the purple-robed master in your cave abode and he asks you this question, remember to say that you don't. Second senior brother cast a solemn glance at Su Ming and Hu Zi before he shook his head and walked into the distance. His footsteps were very strange, because even though he was walking away, he still managed to make sunlight fall on the side of his face. Hu Zi blinked. He always thought that he was very intelligent, so when his second senior brother's words reached him, he was not convinced and thought that second senior brother was misleading them. If Master really wore purple robes and came to him, he would definitely not listen to his second senior brother and tell his master that he knew. I'd like to see just what would happen if I said yes. Hu Zi lifted his head as if pleased with himself and exchanged a few words with Su Ming before picking up his wine pot and leaving the place. During the past few days, the three of them had regularly gathered together. One of them would drink and one would let sunlight shine on the side of his face as he planted more flowers on the already green-covered ground. As for the last one, he would be sitting by the side with his drawing board as he drew on it. Su Ming had already lost count of how many strokes he had drawn. His drawing board may seem empty, but in truth, if anyone sensed it carefully, they could gradually tell that there was a suppressed presence within that was gradually growing stronger. The day of Sky Mist Shaman Hunt was drawing closer. The disciples in Freezing Sky Clan started making detailed preparations during. There were also many private trades that occurred among them. In fact, some of the disciples that had been away for many years returned, and their goal was to join the Sky Mist Shaman hunt this time. Since this battle was a rather large-scale battle that occurred only once a century, it was a very attractive thing to the disciples. The shamans were a mysterious group of people that were somewhat similar yet completely different to berserkers. They lived in the area outside Sky Mist Barrier and prevented the berserkers in the land of South Morning from completely controlling the entire land of South Morning. They also prevented countless people from leaving the place, forcing them to be unable to leave the land of South Morning as well as meet other berserkers in the other continents in this world, so keeping them from knowing whether they had any other comrades. To the disciples of Freezing Sky Clan, the battle against the shamans allowed them to see the shamanic spells that were obviously different from berserker arts. Perhaps they would even be able to obtain some form of serendipity. Besides, practically all the beasts in the shaman tribe had a beast core within them, and this thing was a great tonic for berserkers. There was also another rule set by those guarding Sky Mist Barrier that a person would be rewarded based on the number of shamans he or she killed. The more shamans he or she killed, the greater the reward would be. Every single time Sky Mist Shaman Hunt was held, the two big tribes and schools, Freezing Sky and Western Sea, would bring out grand rewards for the disciples who killed their enemies. The rewards offered for the battle this time would also top all the rewards of the past 100 years because the battle was a large-scale battle that occurred only once every century. The rewards were just one of the factors that attracted the people to join the battle. There were also people who joined for the fame that would come from this battle. In Sky Mist City was a gigantic rock. That rock stood tall and towered into the sky. All the people of South Morning who wanted to join the battle would leave a handprint on that rock right at the moment they arrived in Sky Mist City so that their presences would be left behind. After that, a rather detailed ranking board that would rank all the people based on how many shamans they killed would appear on that rock. Once Sky Mist Shaman Hunt ended, the ranks would spread through all the berserker tribes in the land of South Morning so that all people would know of it. During the hunt, the ranking board would be observed by all the powerful berserkers who came to the place. Those who were ranked higher on the board would receive more attention, and those within the top 100 would temporarily be given the name Tien Lan 1. If they could enter the top 10, then they would be given the title of Sky Mist Guard. If they entered the top 3 and maintained their position, then they would obtain the right for permanent residency in Sky Mist City. The person in the first place would obtain Sky Mist's sacred treasure. However, this treasure could only be given to the person in first place temporarily. Once he or she was no longer in the first place, then the treasure would automatically disappear and appear in the hands of the new person who obtained first place. When the battle ended, the treasure would disappear and reappear in Sky Mist City to be worshipped once again. Yet even so, there were plenty of rumors regarding Sky Mist's sacred treasure. One among the many rumors had been proven true. The sacred treasure, which was only given to those ranked first temporarily during the battles that occurred only once a century, would increase the power of the person who continuously held onto it incessantly for those 2 short years. Prestige, fame, rewards, all these things made the people who wanted to join the Sky Mist Shaman Hunt this time arrive and start an incredibly intense preparation stage. There were less than 10 months before the battle began. Among the 9 summits on the great frozen plains of Freezing Sky Clan, besides the 9th summit, all the other 8 summits were preparing for the battle. Only the people in the 9th summit still maintained their peaceful lives as they went on understanding their very own clearing mind art. Su Ming's life was very peaceful, and he treasured his current lifestyle. Ever since he came to the land of South Morning, it was rare that he could experience moments like these, especially the feeling he found here, where he now treated the mountain as his home. His senior brothers were kind to him, and he experienced the type of warmth that he would only find if he belonged to a place over here. Su Ming might not have shown any desire to join Sky Mist Shaman Hunt, but he had already made his decision in his heart regarding the battle. He wanted to go. He wanted to join the fray. Only these sorts of battles would be able to make him improve quickly, because the only demand Su Ming had for himself was to increase his own power. He had to make himself stronger. My power is still far from enough for me to leave the land of South Morning and return to the alliance of the Western region. Su Ming's right hand slashed across the drawing board before him. He lifted his head and looked at the weather. The sky was already darkening, and even the few rays of evening sun that still remained somewhat visible in the distance had become much dimmer. Su Ming stood up and walked towards his cave abode. Over the past few days, besides copying Sima Shin's sword slash, he had also been doing something else. That thing was one of the things he was preparing for the Sky Mist Shaman hunt this time. His cave abode had become much bigger than how it was a few months back. 3 more ice rooms had been opened up, and howls that no one could hear except Su Ming, since he had divine senses, would travel forth from one of the larger ice rooms in his cave. Su Ming walked up to the ice room with a passive expression, entering it. Right as he did so, a gust of cold wind blew against his face, and a blurred figure of a person closed in on him in an instant. Yet the very moment he got closer to Su Ming, that figure let out a shrill cry, tumbling a few dozen feet backward. His face was revealed then. It was an existence that had the wings of the moon while possessing the body of a person. His eyes were bloodshot with raging violence, and as he retreated, he kept his glare fixed on Su Ming. His body was caught in between being an illusion and having physical substance, though he looked as if he was about to fade away at any moment. His entire body was red, and the space around him distorted in a manner that caused him to look as if he was enveloped by invisible fire and that he was burning. He was naked, and on his skin were scale-like objects overlapping each other. His hands turned into claws as he howled at Su Ming. "He Feng, you were the one who asked to fuse with the souls of the wings of the moon within me. The process is still ongoing. Are you saying that you can't hold on anymore?" Su Ming asked coldly. His voice reverberated through the ice room and fell into the strange person's ears. His words made the person shudder, and conflict appeared in his bloodshot, violent eyes. That person was actually He Feng. After Su Ming fought against Sima Shin and cleared up his cave abode, He Feng told him after much careful thought that he wanted to fuse together with the souls of the creatures he did not know the names of residing in Su Ming's body. He Feng was a cautious person. He did not want to become a vessel spirit, but if he did not want to become a vessel spirit, then he had to prove that he was not a burden. When he fought against Sima Shin's ice wolf spirit, he had struggled greatly, and that was why he made this decision, because his power was simply not enough. Su Ming kept his silence about the matter for several days before he agreed to He Feng's request and opened up the ice room so that it could be the place for He Feng to fuse with the souls of the wings of the moon. In the beginning, the fusion was successful, but gradually, something unforeseen happened. As He Feng continued fusing with the countless wings of the moon, he lost all form of reasoning, became the way he was now. The moment the conflicted look appeared in He Feng's eyes, Su Ming took a step forward quickly and lifted his right hand, swiftly drawing a circle at the center of He Feng's brows with his right index finger. Once the circle was formed, blood-red light shone from within it. The circle looked like the blood moon when it appeared on the center of He Feng's brows. When the blood moon appeared, He Feng closed his eyes and slowly sat down cross-legged, regaining his calm. Once every few days, Su Ming would use this method to suppress this change that appeared when He Feng fused with the wings of the moon. Only by continuing with this process right up till the end would He Feng become truly strong. Su Ming expected this process to last for several more months, perhaps even longer. He stared at He Feng for a long while before turning around and leaving the ice room. He sat down outside and closed his eyes with the drawing board in hand, once again immersing himself in copying the slash. If there were no interruptions, then he would have perhaps continued copying the slash until he needed to visit He Feng again. But when morning came, the 9th summit welcomed a guest. That person came for Su Ming. Tian Lan, Sky Mist's pinyin, it's like a new name given to a person. If you were to remember Fang Kang Lan, and how she's called Han Kang Z. Han something Z is a name given to the top students in Freezing Sky Clan, so you have Han Kang Z. So Tian Lan something is the same. You have Tian Lan Meng, and I do believe that her name is one of these. I take away your surname and your middle name and give you a titled name. Chapter 251, Tian Lan Meng's Invitation. I am Shen Chan disciple of the 7th Summit. I came on orders from my eldest senior sister to invite Uncle Master Su of the 9th Summit to meet her, a melodious voice asked, traveling up the 9th Summit on that morning. That voice belonged to a girl in an emerald green robe. The girl looked to be either 17 or 18 years of age. She stood at the foot of the 9th summit with her back straight and a hint of curiosity on her face as she observed her surroundings, which happened to be a place that she had never been before. It was a pity, however. Her lack of understanding towards the 9th summit guaranteed that once her voice traveled into the mountain, Huzi would continue drinking and snoring with a pleased smile on his face as he dreamed about something again. Second senior brother would continue tending to his flowers as sunlight fell on his side profile. Ziche would continue sitting outside Su Ming's cave, grouping words together in his head and having the time of his life as he occasionally muttered the poems and songs he had created. Eldest senior brother spoke even less and kept himself in isolation. The way the 9th summit operated led to the girl receiving absolutely no answer even though her voice traveled through the mountain for quite some time. Su Ming heard her, but did not bother with it. He did not know the eldest senior sister from the 7th summit and did not want to meet with people he did not know. The girl waited for a little while longer before frowning and dashing up the mountain stairs. She might not have come to the 9th summit before, but it was still clear that before she came to the place, she had learned the location of Su Ming's cave from someone and was now walking up as if she was very familiar with the place. After a moment, she arrived outside Su Ming's cave on the quiet 9th summit, but her path was blocked by Ziche. Ziche sat outside with a cold and aloof look as he stared at the girl. Uncle Master refuses to see anyone. Please go back. So it is senior brother Ziche. I am Chen Chan. You should know who eldest senior sister of the 7th summit is. I came on orders by my eldest senior sister to ask Uncle Master Su to see her. Please relay my message to him. The girl's expression was passive as her clear and melodious voice echoed in the air. It was as if she did not care about Ziche's power at all. Ziche frowned. Naturally, he knew about the eldest senior sister of the 7th summit, Tian Lan Meng. That woman was ranked first on the Great Frozen Plains ranking board. Just like Sima Xin, she was one of the people who were known to have the possibility of becoming the god of berserkers. He hesitated for a moment before he got up and walked into Su Ming's cave abode. After a short while, Ziche came out and with a flat expression. He waved his hand dismissively and said, he won't see her. The girl frowned and cast a glance at Su Ming's cave, which was located not too far away from her, before she turned into a long arc and left. After a moment, the long-haired woman sitting on the big rock that stood at the top of the 7th summit and had witnessed the fight between Su Ming and Sima Xin while also copying the power of that one stroke executed by Su Ming smiled faintly. He won't see me, That's right, eldest senior sister, that Su Ming is far too arrogant, he actually thinks he is our Uncle Master. I already said that I went there under your orders. The person who spoke was the girl who just came back, and her face was red with anger. It's fine. Take this with you and go there again. The long-haired woman was breathtakingly beautiful. She pushed her black hair with her hand away and brought out a jade box, handing it to the girl. The girl took the box, and while she was curious about what was hidden in there, she did not ask anything. She simply nodded and left. After a moment, on the 9th summit, Ziche stood inside Su Ming's cave and placed a jade box before him respectfully, then took a few steps back to wait for instructions. Su Ming looked at the jade box quietly for a while before he opened it. The moment he did so, the entire cave abode lit up. Sitting inside the jade box was a golden stone coin. The golden stone coin was diamond-shaped and sparkled in a manner that gave a clouded, dreamlike feeling to others while also making people feel as if their souls were about to be sucked into the coin. A superior grade stone coin. Ziche sucked in a sharp breath. The value of a golden stone coin, even if there was only one, was incredibly high. It was also extremely rare. One of these golden stone coins was enough to exchange for 100,000 normal stone coins. However, this golden stone coin gave Su Ming a different feeling compared to Ziche. There was a shocking amount of spiritual aura within it, and the density of it made Su Ming's divine senses feel as if they were being sucked in. She brought out a spirit stone of this quality just to see me. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes and he closed the lid on the box with his right hand before pushing it back to Ziche. I won't see her. Ziche licked his lips, picked up the box, and exited the cave. A long arc flew towards the risen platform on the 7th summit. Soon, Chen Chan-er's angry voice rang on the summit. Eldest senior sister, that Su Ming is just too arrogant. He still refuses to see. Just who does he think he is? You already asked him to come twice, and he's still ignoring you. Once the girl returned the box back to the woman and stood fuming by her side, she glared in the direction of where the 9th summit was located in the distance. It's fine. Send this box over. The long-haired woman smiled gently and brought out another box. It was as if she had long since expected this to happen and had prepared more than one box such as this. Yet the girl did not seem to have noticed this in her anger. When she heard the woman's voice, she originally did not want to go, but in the end she still took the box obediently and flew away in a long arc. Su Ming, I'd like to see just how many things you'll make me bring out before you're willing to come. The long-haired woman smiled in an unaffected manner before she closed her eyes. In the 9th summit, Zichai's ragged breathing echoed within Su Ming's cave as he stared at the beast skins folded on top of each other in the box lying before Su Ming. There were 4 words on the skins, and they were, God of Berserker's Transformation. Only when the disciples are acknowledged by the school and have the possibility of becoming the God of Berserkers would they be given the divine ability of God of Berserker's Transformation. Tian Lan Meng actually sent this thing here. Zichai could manage to not pay too much attention towards the golden stone coin, but he could not afford to not care about these beast skins. His breathing became quicker. If he was Su Ming, then he would accept these things without hesitation. It's just meeting her. With much difficulty, Zichai turned his gaze away from the beast skins and looked at Su Ming. Su Ming's expression remained calm. He simply cast a glance at the beast skins within the box before he closed his eyes. When he reopened them after a moment, he closed the box once again and pushed it towards Zichai. I won't see her. Zichai was stunned. He opened his mouth as if he was about to say something, but when he saw Su Ming's expression, he quickly swallowed his words and picked up the box and walked out with begrudging reluctance, feeling that it was a great pity. She must be aiming for something big by showing off all these valuable treasures to me. I've never seen this woman before, so it's best that I don't take her things. The melodious voice rang once again not long after the previous time on the 7th summit. This time, that voice was clearly more high-pitched, and the anger in the voice also became more apparent. I'm not going anymore, eldest senior sister. I won't go. Just who does that Su Ming think he is? He can't even win against Sima Xin, and he's acting so arrogantly. You invited him 3 times, and that alone is already enough for him to see that you're showing him enough respect, but he still refused. The long-haired woman continued smiling. However, that smile not only did not contain any hint of coldness, it instead held a hint of profoundness within that the girl did not understand. It was as if she was not offended by Su Ming's actions but grew to admire him because of it. It seems like I've viewed him too superficially. Give him this thing. The long-haired woman was silent for a moment before she grabbed at the air and another box appeared once again in her hands. This box was clearly different from the previous ones and was about 7 feet long. If he still sends this back, then give him this wooden slip. The woman passed the long box to the girl and then brought out a wooden slip about the size of 2 fingers from her bosom before placing it in the girl's hands. All right, Sister Chan, this is the last time. If he still returns them, then we'll forget about this, the long-haired woman said gently. There was a tone in her voice that made Chen Chan unable to refuse her request. She could only dip her head down and nod obediently. This is the last time. Yes, it's the last time. The long-haired woman smiled, and it was a breathtaking smile. She patted the girl's hair. Only then did Chen Chan turn into a long arc and go to the 9th summit. Peace was bound to be robbed away from the 9th summit that day. Zichai's breathing had become much more rapid in Su Ming's cave compared to the time he saw the beast skins that recorded the skill for the God of Berserker's transformation. Freezing Sky Sword. The Freezing Sky Sword that will only be forged once every 500 years within Freezing Sky Clan. Only the disciples who have contributed to the school will be given this sword by Heaven Gate. Tian Lan Meng actually brought this out. This is. Zichai was shaken when he saw what lay in the opened box before Su Ming. He simply could not fathom why the woman would do so. Su Ming looked at the sword inside the box calmly. That sword was an ice sword and was completely transparent. It was letting off a chilling air that made his hair stand on end. This was a great piece of treasure. There are only 14 Freezing Sky swords given out inside Freezing Sky Clan. There is an art embedded within each of these swords. Apparently, it'll also be much easier if you enter Freezing Sky Cave with them. A great look of longing appeared on Ziche's face. Su Ming was silent as he looked at the sword. Yet even though his eyes were trained on the sword, his heart was not on it. Instead, he was immersed in his own thoughts. First it's the golden stone coin, then it's the god of Berserker's transformation, now it's this Freezing Sky sword, the eldest senior sister of the 7th summit, Tian Lan Meng, who is ranked first in the Great Frozen Plains ranking boards. Just what are your goals? Su Ming frowned. Ziche hesitated for a moment before he spoke in a low voice to try and persuade Su Ming. Uncle Master, this sword, you should take this sword. She's leading me into something. Su Ming lifted his head and gave Ziche a look before he closed the lid on the box before him with his right hand and pushed it away once again. I won't see her. Ziche felt his jaw fall slack and only let out a breath after a moment. He hesitated for a moment before sighing eventually and taking the box, then he left the cave with great reluctance. Yet after a moment, he returned. This time, there was an odd expression on his face. When Su Ming looked over, he held out a wooden slip to him respectfully. They said that this is the last item they will offer, Ziche whispered. Su Ming took the wooden slip and cast a glance at it, and the very moment he did so, his expression changed. Even when he saw the golden stone coin, the god of Berserker's transformation, and Freezing Sky sword, such a drastic change of expression had never appeared. Ziche was momentarily stunned. He had stolen a glance at that wooden slip before and found that it was empty. There was absolutely nothing carved on it, so when he saw Su Ming's expression, he could not understand what caused him to have this reaction. Su Ming stared at the wooden slip in his hands blankly and only closed his eyes after a long moment. When he opened his eyes once again, he stood up. Ziche, I'm going to go out for a while. You don't have to follow me. Chapter 252. What exactly is spirit? What exactly is spirit? Ziche might have been confused by Su Ming's words, but he still obeyed. He watched with bewilderment appeared in his eyes how Su Ming walked out of his cave and turned into a long arc before flying off the mountain. The wooden slip looked ordinary and there was nothing special about it, so why did Uncle Master Su change his mind so quickly after he saw it? Could it be that the small wooden slip had something even more valuable than the golden stone coin, the god of Berserker's transformation, and even Freezing Sky sword? Ziche simply could not understand it. This was the first time Su Ming left the 9th summit ever since he battled against Sima Xin. To him, neither Freezing Sky Clan nor the Great Frozen Plains sect were his home in the land of South Morning. The only place he called home was the 9th summit. Su Ming was walking forward in the air, and the 7th summit lay at the end of what his eyes could see. Tian Lan Meng had invited him multiple times and had offered him gifts from the golden stone coin, to the god of Berserker's transformation, and later to Freezing Sky sword before eventually changing it to the wooden slip. There was a process hidden in her actions. It could be said to have been a test, but could also be said to have been a gradual change of heart. If she had not given the wooden slip, Su Ming would not have ventured out of the 9th summit, neither would he have went to meet the person who was ranked first on the Great Frozen Plains ranking board, Tian Lan Meng. Su Ming's expression was passive even as he held the wooden slip in his hands. As he moved forward, another long arc was struggling to keep up behind him. The person in that long arc was in fact the Chen Chan'er who had come forth to invite Su Ming all those multiple times. Su Ming did not turn his head back. With the wooden slip in hand, he arrived in the sky above the 7th summit before long. The 7th summit seemed a little fuzzy in his eyes, as if there was a layer of mist around that mountain, yet if he took a closer look, he would find that there was actually no mist there. He immediately discovered that the mountain was giving him this strange sensation due to the rune that was naturally activated once all the halls within the mountain were in operation. This was completely different from the 9th summit. Su Ming gave it a brief glance before he averted his gaze and turned to look at the wooden slip in his hands. A glint appeared in his eyes, and his grip around the wooden slip tightened. He stood in the air calmly without a hint of impatience or lethargy on his face. Chen Chan'er, who was behind him, only managed to catch up to him after a moment. It might have been because she was rushing over now, having been moving back and forth between the mountains multiple times that day, but her forehead was covered in sweat. She gave Su Ming a glare and flew past him without even a word. Su Ming did not bother about the girl's actions. He followed behind Chen Chan calmly, and the two of them turned into long arcs as they flew towards the top of the mountain. The moment they got closer to the mountain, the barely discernible mist before Chen Chan suddenly disappeared and the mountain returned to normal, allowing Chen Chan to enter smoothly. Su Ming followed behind. It was as if he had walked through a membrane, but it also felt that he had just passed through a layer of water. When he stepped into the seventh summit, the wind that blew against him was no longer cold but held a hint of warmth, and as he breathed in, there was a sweet fragrance to it. That fragrance did not come from flowers or plants, but was a unique scent that was formed because there were a lot of female disciples in this mountain. Playful giggles reached his ears, and in each place Su Ming's eyes swept through, he saw women and girls. The female disciples on the summit were either playing around in groups or walking up the mountain stairs leisurely. They were so great in number that it was dazzling just looking at them. Compared to the quiet ninth summit, the seventh summit was simply far too lively. This liveliness that all came from women made Su Ming uncomfortable. Almost at the very instant he arrived on the seventh summit, quite a number of female disciples also noticed his presence. His green robes, handsome figure, and the scar under his eyes made a lot of people able to identify him with just one glance. I remember him. He's Su Ming, the one who fought against fellow brother Sima. He's from the ninth summit. I remember too, he once told fellow brother Sima that he is his uncle master. Why is he here in the seventh summit? That's right, men seldom come to the seventh summit. Who did he come for? Chirruping sound reached his ears, forcing Su Ming to take a deep breath to calm himself down. This was the first time he was in a situation like this. He could not adapt to this quickly and could only walk forward swiftly to avoid all the gazes focused on him. Ziyan was walking down the mountain stairs, her back straight. Her lazy demeanor gave her a unique, charming air. She placed a hand on her mouth and yawned, and when she lifted her head, she also saw Su Ming, who was walking to the top of the mountain with Chen Chan. Ziyan blinked. When she saw Chen Chan guiding Su Ming forward, a confused look appeared on her face. She fell silent for a moment before she immediately moved towards where Han Kangzi was. There was another girl who saw Su Ming's arrival on the seventh summit. The girl wore a purple robe and stood on a mountain rock. With the wind in her face, she looked into the distance, and her gaze was trained on the first summit. The girl was incredibly beautiful and had a hint of wildness surrounding her. Her eyes were half-lidded and she was frowning, as if she was hesitating because of something. When she saw Su Ming flying through the sky, towards the top of the mountain, disdain and contempt appeared within her eyes. However, that expression was quickly hidden away. She took a deep breath and cast a profound gaze towards the first summit before gritting her teeth. Resolution appeared in her eyes. Bai Su, there's definitely someone who looks incredibly similar to you which he met before in his life. That's why if you go and approach him, he won't refuse to see you. But I can't let you do this. Even it's for the reason so that I can plant a berserker seed inside him which would definitely make me succeed in challenging Freezing Sky Cave, and even if I don't and the cave is dangerous for me. Still, even if it's risky, I want to try it. That girl was naturally Bai Su. At the moment that determined look appeared in her eyes, she remembered Sima Shin's gentle words to her 2 months ago. Big brother Sima, I won't let anything happen to you in Freezing Sky Cave, Bai Su mumbled and turned around. The wind picked up a few locks of her hair and, as they floated in the wind, Bai Su left, similarly charging towards the top of the mountain. Su Ming floated down on the top of the seventh summit. This was the first time he met Tian Lan Mang. She was a woman with long hair and was dressed in red robes, and she was sitting at the edge of a huge rock which stood at the top of the mountain. The woman was looking at Su Ming and her face was as beautiful as a picture. Her smile was warm, and it did not give others even the slightest feeling that she was a stranger. In fact, her smile gave others the impression that they were looking at an old friend. Sister Chan, you can go back first, the long-haired woman said softly, and when the girl by her side heard her words, she nodded her head obediently and left the place. However, when she passed by Su Ming, she did not forget to glare at him. Clearly, her multiple trips to the ninth summit had angered her due to Su Ming's multiple refusals. Once the girl left, the long-haired woman smiled at him gently and spoke to Su Ming softly. "Chan is still young, Brother Su, please don't mind her." There was a gentle air around her. This temperament, along with her natural grace and gentleness, gave her a noble air. Su Ming's gaze swept across the woman. She was beautiful, but even though she was gentle, he still felt that there was a layer of mist before her, which caused others to have the feeling as if they were looking at her through the mist and could not see her clearly. Su Ming walked forward silently, then with a lift of his robes, he sat down on the same rock right opposite the woman. Once Su Ming sat down, he looked at the woman before her calmly and said languidly, "It's fine. In fact, I was fortunate to have been invited so many times." Su Ming could not gauge the woman's level of cultivation. "Congratulations, Brother Su, you have improved once again. As expected, the people of the ninth summit are all extraordinary. I have overlooked this previously," Tian Lanmeng said with a smile. She trained her eyes on Su Ming, and their gazes met each other. Su Ming did not speak. He simply met Tian Lanmeng's gaze squarely. After the span of a few breaths, wind blew past them and lifted a few locks of Tian Lanmeng's hair. These locks of hair broke their gazes. After a long while, Tian Lanmeng broke the silence and asked softly, "Brother Su, how was the one copy I did?" "You copied the spirit, and the form was also present. Both spirit and form are there, but there are still some details missing," Su Ming answered calmly. "What exactly is spirit?" Tian Lanmeng suddenly asked. "Spirit is the mind, it is your thoughts, your imagination. Spirit is when you remember as you dream in your heart. This is what we call thought, and it is also spirit." Su Ming cast Tian Lanmeng a look before his gaze fell on the sky behind her. "Brother Su, your understanding towards the word is different from mine." Tian Lanmeng's gaze towards Su Ming changed slightly. "Pray tell." Su Ming averted his gaze from the sky and trained his eyes on the long-haired woman's face. "Spirit is Tao," Tian Lanmeng stated calmly. "It is not thought, because thought in itself is narrow, but Tao is endless. Tao is a realm that those from other realms seek. Every person has a different Tao. The great Tao is boundless, and those who obtain Tao will see through the world, and in turn, we can say that we have found and become the truth. I have to thank you, Brother Su. Your fight with Sima Shin has allowed me to reach an epiphany and understand the meaning behind a sentence. I read this sentence from an ancient scroll before. It is a sentence that is spoken in the other worlds. If you stay on your Tao but have no method of solving a particular problem now, that method will eventually come to you. If you have the skills and power, but have strayed from your Tao, then you cannot use your skills, and your power will forever stay stagnant." Tian Lanmeng's voice gradually started drifting and echoed around them. "Due to my epiphany, while I still might not know the true meaning behind the words, I can view my epiphany as my Tao. Because I have a Tao, I could draw that copy of the slash you did after just one glance. That is why the spirit is Tao, and not the thought, heart, and imagination you speak of. Brother Su, do you understand my words?" Tian Lanmeng smiled softly. Su Ming looked at the smile on her face. There was no hint of ridicule or scorn within her smile, only logic and persistence, and she seemed to be waiting for his answer. "All things in the world differ in sizes. My understanding towards the word is narrow and small to you, and the Tao you speak is a huge thing that seeks to reach a state where you understand the world. It is like two spots, like two different directions, and like two different extremes." Su Ming closed his eyes and continued, unhurried, "To me, the heart is aspiration, and the spirit is a realm. You are walking on the Tao of the heavens, and I'm walking through the narrow gate on the earth, but once I walk past that gate, what I'm searching for is just to merely open my eyes. Do you understand what I'm saying?" The last sentence written in the beast skin scroll suddenly surfaced in Su Ming's mind. "You cannot see the world that I see." Chapter 253, That State. Tian Lanmeng frowned. Su Ming's words threw her off slightly, but even if she pondered over them, she still found her understanding of his words to be slightly unclear. She did not quite understand what he had said. Tian Lan Meng fell silent for a moment before she asked softly, "What do you mean by opening your eyes?" Su Ming looked at the woman before him and lifted his right hand suddenly. With a wave, the air from his fingertips swept past the mountain rock lying by his side, and as ice shards flew into the air, a blooming flower appeared on the iced river underneath the rock. Anyone who saw that flower could feel the overflowing vigor coming from it. In fact, they would find themselves hard-pressed to discern whether it was carved on the iced river, or whether the flower had been growing on the ice since the beginning. "Copy it," Su Ming said calmly, lowering his hand. A sparkle appeared in Tian Lan Meng's eyes. She turned her gaze towards the flower on the iced river and pointed a finger at it. She drew a few strokes through the air, and another ice flower appeared on the ice river. The two flowers looked completely the same, and it was difficult to find any difference between them, whether it was their spirit or form. "Do you understand now?" Su Ming looked towards Tian Lan Meng. The long-haired woman frowned, and after a moment, she shook her head. Su Ming lifted his right hand once again. This time he did something simple. He pointed towards the mountain rock by his side and jabbed a small hole in that mountain rock. Several cracks appeared on the edges of the hole, spreading outwards. "Copy it." Su Ming's voice still remained calm. Tian Lan Meng looked at the small hole on the mountain rock that appeared once Su Ming lifted his finger and fell silent for a long time. When she eventually lifted her head to look at Su Ming, a complicated expression appeared in her eyes. "You are always copying," Su Ming said slowly, lifting his head, "because you think that the spirit is Tao. You search for something abstruse. That's why you can copy many things, because you think that as you search for it, you will find your Tao eventually. I don't know what is the Tao you speak, but from what you said just now, I can understand that while the Tao is an abstruse concept, it exists. It exists within the world. Perhaps all the plants, trees, flowers, and stones have a Tao within them. What I seek isn't a Tao, but to have my mind acting as my aspiration, to have my spirit as my realm. And when I open my eyes, I will draw out my heart's desires. This is the reason why I can draw, but you can only copy." Tian Lan Meng remained silent. After a long while, she looked at Su Ming with an even more complicated gaze. "If all the people in the world are drunk and you are the only one sober, then it means that all the people in the world are awake, and you are asleep," Tian Lan Meng mumbled. She suddenly understood why the people in the Ninth Summit had all those weird eccentricities that normal people would not understand. "Similarly, I drew out what existed in my heart with this one stroke, and that is my own stroke. You, however, only copied it. There are some things you can copy, and there are some that you cannot." Su Ming stood up and flipped over the wooden slip he held in his hands, revealing its back. "I came here and answered your questions because I wanted to ask something. But now, it seems that I don't have to ask you. You don't understand." Su Ming sighed softly and turned around to leave. Su Ming. At the same time he turned around, a vast and mighty presence suddenly rose behind him. Tian Lan Meng slowly stood up and a tenacious look appeared within her eyes as she looked at Su Ming. "I cannot see the picture behind the wooden slip, but I can feel it. If you want to know where the wooden slip came from, I can tell you. But I want to know what exactly you mean by the things I cannot copy." "Do you truly want to know?" Su Ming's footsteps faltered. He did not turn his head back but asked calmly. "If you can help me answer my question, then I'll give you the golden stone coin, the god of Berserker's transformation, and freezing sky sword." As Tian Lan Meng spoke, she lifted her right hand and waved it towards him. The three boxes instantly charged towards Su Ming and fell by his side. Tian Lan Meng's expression returned to state of passiveness before she spoke flatly. "If you can only say it but cannot do it, then I won't trouble you. You can take the wooden slip and leave, but in return, you have to promise me something, and you cannot refuse it." Su Ming fell silent for a moment before he turned around and waved his hand. The three boxes were instantly taken, and as he looked at Tian Lan Meng, he lifted his right hand and slashed at the mountain rock by his side abruptly with one finger. The mountain rock trembled, and a faint mark appeared on it. That mark looked like a line and a slash, a sorrowful feeling spreading out from within it. Tian Lan Meng did not speak. She only gave it a look before lifting her hand and pointing towards it. A copied stroke that was the same in spirit and form as Su Ming's slash appeared on the mountain rock. Su Ming moved his right hand once again. This time, he drew out 10 strokes continuously. Each stroke seemed the same but were in truth completely different from each other. As they fell on the mountain rock, the rock rumbled. Tian Lan Meng's expression was calm. Almost at the same moment Su Ming made those slashes, she copied him, and when his 10 strokes fell on the rock, 10 copied strikes that were the exact same as his own appeared beside them. Su Ming pushed off the ground with his right foot and rose into the air. In mid-air, he closed his eyes and lifted his right hand before starting to draw on the 7th summit. 10, 100, 1000, as Su Ming's right hand drew, the entire 7th summit started trembling, and long marks appeared on the surface of the mountain. Those long marks were all caused by Su Ming. All of them seemed the same but were in reality entirely different from each other. Tian Lan Meng too rose into the air and lifted her right hand by Su Ming's side. She started copying all of them, and even though each stroke was different, she still achieved the same results as she copied them. As one of them drew and the other copied, the entire 7th summit trembled. The rumbling sounds made all the disciples within the mountain feel their hearts shake and they lifted their heads to look upwards. At that moment, an old woman dressed in white robes looked at Su Ming and Tian Lan Meng with sparkling eyes from the 7th summit. Su Ming did not stop even after he finished drawing those 1000 strokes. He simply continued on drawing calmly. This was nothing difficult for him. The number of strokes he made on a regular basis far surpassed the number he had now. He was simply drawing as he pleased and was using the mountain as his drawing board as he drew 1000, 3000, 5000, 7000 strokes. All those strokes contained a different presence, and gradually, it made Tian Lan Meng's speed in copying them slow down. She began to slowly show signs that she could not catch up to Su Ming, because she was copying, and Su Ming was creating on his own. One of them was drawing what he thought in his heart, and the other was merely copying it. Time passed by, but even as Su Ming continued to close in on his 10,000th stroke, he still had not stopped. It was as if he was completely immersed in creating a picture, and it seemed like he was drawing out the world on the 7th summit with each stroke. The many female disciples on the 7th summit began to experience a change in their expressions as the mountain trembled and as they watched the strange competition between Su Ming and Tian Lan Meng in the sky. Bai Su stood at the top of the mountain and looked at Su Ming standing in the air before sucking in a deep breath. She suddenly realized that this Su Ming seemed to be slightly different from the abhorrent man in her memories. When Su Ming was somewhere around his 13,000th stroke, Tian Lan Meng could no longer catch up. Sweat had started forming on her forehead. Her speed had started to slow down because those 10,000-something strokes that were completely different from each other had already become very difficult for her to copy, for they had different feelings coming from within them. Yet she still gritted her teeth and persevered in copying all those strokes, though her speed was also becoming increasingly slower. When she copied out the 15,000th stroke, Su Ming had already drawn his 20,000th stroke by her side. The 20,000 different strokes made Tian Lan Meng turn pale. Her actions gradually slowed down until she eventually came to a halt. When she looked at Su Ming, she bit her bottom lip. Su Ming still had his eyes closed and continued drawing. At the instant he made his 23,000th stroke, he opened his eyes and drew that last line across the sky. The very instant he made that slash, the sky roared and a large crack appeared in the air for a brief moment. It might have only been for a brief moment, but it was precisely because it only appeared briefly, that once it appeared, it immediately disappeared without a trace. Can you copy that? Su Ming stood in midair and looked at Tian Lan Meng. Tian Lan Meng trembled. As she looked at the final stroke, she found herself rendered speechless. After a long while, Tian Lan Meng said in a hoarse voice, "This isn't Sima Shin's slash." "It isn't. This is mine," Su Ming said softly, then turned around and walked away. He disappeared into the distance and just his voice floated through the air and landed into Tian Lan Meng's ears. "Your request is definitely for us to work together during Sky Mist Shaman Hunt. If it is something related to the things you gave me, then I will work with you." The old woman in white on the 7th summit watched Su Ming leave, then lifted her head to look at the sky. A brilliant light appeared in her eyes. "Picture creation," she mumbled, then looked towards the 9th summit. It was not long since this child entered the 9th summit, and yet he has already reached this level of understanding, However, is the word creation truly the underlying meaning lying within the Berserker tribe? Uncle Master Tian Shiezi, due to his epiphany, your eldest disciple is forced into isolation and cannot leave. Due to his epiphany, your second disciple split into two different personalities. Due to his epiphany, your third disciple has two different realities, his dreams and what is in the real world. These three people have succeeded, but have also failed. Perhaps they will once again succeed someday, but it is only a mere possibility. Right now, your fourth disciple is about to arrive at that state. What sort of change will happen to him? You went through 4 changes of heart and could not go through the 5th, but even if you eventually make it through, there will be more waiting for you. If you are already caught in this state, then can your disciples do it? Creation is difficult. The old woman shook her head and a complicated look appeared on her face. Meng-Er is the most powerful among all those within the same generation in the Great Frozen Plains. For the training of her state of mind, I let her understand the Taoes of the other worlds. This method is stable, but it is unrelated to the Berserkers. As the old woman mumbled with mixed feelings in her heart, Tian Shiezi was sitting in his cave at the top of the 9th summit. At that moment, his face was twisted with mixed expressions that showed pain and struggle. His robes would sometimes be white, sometimes black, occasionally red, and at times green, but most of the time, they would stay purple. Chapter 254, Omen. On his way back to the 9th summit, Su Ming stopped twice. The first time he stopped because he saw Han Feizi. This was the first time he met this woman ever since she entered Freezing Sky Clan. They met each other's gazes for a brief time in midair when they ran into each other. Han Feizi was not alone. There was a man and woman following behind her. Su Ming was familiar with them. They were Chen Yubing and Shu Ruyu. Right now, they were moving several steps behind Han Feizi. Judging by their respectful looks, it was clear that they had become her followers. Han Feizi still looked as cold as ever. Her cold demeanor may seem alluring, but the cold attitude coming from within her spirit itself was not something that everyone could accept. She wore a green dress and her hair fell around her shoulders. Her expression was indifferent, and nothing much changed within her when she saw Su Ming. "Greetings, Uncle Master Su." "Greetings, Uncle Master Su." Behind Han Feizi, Chen Yubing and Shu Ruyu's expressions immediately became complicated when they saw Su Ming. Yet it quickly turned into respect. They were clearly aware of the difference between themselves and Su Ming, and were shocked by how quickly Su Ming had risen up the ranks of Freezing Sky Clan during the past 6 months since he joined the school. It could be said that Su Ming's battle against Sima Xin made his name sweep through the Great Frozen Plains like a typhoon. While his name might not have run through the entire land like thunder, it was close enough. He nodded towards Chen Yubing and Shu Ruyu before casting Han Feizi a glance. When he saw that the woman did not seem like she was in the mood to talk, he left. Yet at the very moment Su Ming moved, Han Feizi's cold voice appeared languidly. When her words fell into his ears, he had the feeling that his entire body was covered in ice. Her voice held no hint of emotion, and it was so cold that perhaps it could even make a sweltering hot day cool down in an instant. The tone of her voice was enough to tell just how cold the woman's heart, body, and spirit were. "Am I like a scorpion that you would avoid me as such?" Su Ming turned back and cast a profound gaze towards Ha Feizi. Not only did the woman's power increase, her presence had also become drastically different from when she was still in Han Mountain City. Senior brother Chen, senior sister Shu. Han Feizi did not bother about Su Ming's gaze but instead turned to look at the two people of the same discipleship and the same summit following behind her. Chen Yubing and Shu Ruyu lowered their heads. It was clear that they had not just become Han Feizi's followers since they clearly knew the meaning behind Han Feizi's words, even though she had not even finished her sentence. They quickly moved back until they were 1,000 feet away before they stopped and waited at the spot. "We are acquaintances, there's no need for you to speak like this," Su Ming said calmly as he looked at Han Feizi. His initial meeting with this woman was when he entered the inn the first time he went to Han Mountain City and had just initially arrived in the land of South Morning. At that time, she had seemed like she was shrouded by fog and Su Ming could only look at her silence. Her power and status were not things that he could compare himself to at that time. Even their subsequent meetings had been as such, including the first time they battled against each other. Su Ming had been extremely careful at that time. When I went to the fourth summit and met my master, I isolated myself. Sometimes, I would come out, but I never left the mountain. Han Feizi turned her head around and looked at the mountain ranges in the distance as she spoke coldly. Her voice may have been cold, but her words spoke of an intention to try and explain oneself. Su Ming was silent and did not speak. I saw your battle against Sima Shen. Han Feizi's gaze fell upon Su Ming's body. After that, I went into isolation once again so that the distance between us would not widen. Su Ming still remained silent. Han Feizi's words faltered and she no longer spoke. The two of them remained silent for a while longer before Su Ming turned around and walked into the distance. Han Feizi looked at Su Ming's back, and when she spoke once again, her voice still did not contain any hint of emotion. It was still cold and indifferent. Do you remember the matter we discussed when we were in Han Mountain's hidden grounds? I remember. Su Ming did not turn back as he answered calmly. Starting from tomorrow, I will continue training in the skills my master gave me in isolation. I will come out of isolation before the start of Sky Mist Shaman Hunt. During it, I would like you to come with me to a place. Su Ming mulled over it for a moment and did not refuse her. All right, you will be interested in the place. That place is related to the other worlds. Han Feizi spoke softly, and as she spoke, her gaze was trained on Su Ming's retreating back, but she could not see a hint of change in that back. He was still walking away calmly and gradually disappeared from her sight. On his way back to the 9th summit, Su Ming stopped for the second time was small distance away from the 9th summit. Just as he was about to enter the mountain, his footsteps faltered. Just how long are you going to follow me? This place doesn't belong to the 9th summit alone. What right do you have to say that I'm following you? A girl's voice came from behind Su Ming. That voice was unlike Fang Kang Lan's gentleness, not alike to Tian Lanmeng's gracefulness, and neither was it like Han Feizi's coldness, but there was a melodious lilt and provocative tone within that voice that the other three lacked. Su Ming frowned, turned around, and saw a girl in purple standing a few hundred feet away from him. That girl was incredibly beautiful and filled with a wild and untamed air, especially her eyes, which were trained on Su Ming at the moment. There was wariness and scorn within her eyes. This person had a petite face that always appeared in Su Ming's memories. She also had a face that caused him to act on an impulse he did not want to suppress several months ago. This person was Bai Su. Su Ming looked at her and at the face that had appeared multiple times in his memories. At this moment, he did not want to see her. Su Ming turned around and moved his sight away from the girl. After pausing for a brief moment, he landed on the 9th summit. When he started walking on the mountain stairs, he could not help but frown once again. He did not stop anymore though and charged back towards his cave abode instead. Ziche was outside his cave abode. When he saw Su Ming closing in, he quickly stood up and bowed towards him respectfully. He was about to speak when his expression suddenly changed and he turned his gaze towards the direction behind Su Ming. Over there, he gradually saw a hint of purple appearing. At the very instant he saw that dash of purple, a stunned expression appeared on his face. Su Ming was frowning when he walked past Ziche. Before he walked into his cave abode, he turned his head around and looked towards Bai Su coming towards them from afar. Her purple robes, stubbornness, and the provocative look within her eyes made her wild beauty become even more distinct. This is the 9th summit, Su Ming stated calmly. I know. Bai Su lifted her chin and answered. Chase her out. A chilling look appeared in Su Ming's eyes. As he sent his command to Ziche, he turned around and walked into his cave. You don't dare to see me because there's a girl in your memories that look exactly the same as me. If you don't dare to see me, then there will forever be an area in your heart that will hurt. If you don't get rid of that pain, then you will never be able to keep your mind calm. Even if you pretend to be, that is still fake. Bai Su suddenly shouted out. The moment her words left her mouth, Su Ming, who had already walked into his cave, sat down within and closed his eyes, as if he did not hear anything. Junior sister Bai, please don't make this hard for me. Ziche took a step forward and blocked Bai Su, who wanted to trespass into Su Ming's cave. He spoke with a cold and indifferent tone. You still don't dare to see me. I'm the seed planted in your heart, and even if you don't want to see me, I'll still be there. You won't even attack me, why else would you ask someone else to chase me out of the mountain? You can do it yourself. Your power is enough for you to fight against Big Brother Sima. I've only just awakened. With your power, you can chase me away with just a wave of your hand. Why can't you do it? Bai Su shouted loudly, and her gaze fell on Su Ming's cave abode located nearby. She did not even look at Ziche standing by her side. And even if you chase me out of the 9th summit, so what? I'll still come again, I'll come every day. Ziche frowned. He moved the chi within him slightly and a wave of force was instantly formed. It pushed against Bai Su and forced her to move back. When he saw the stubbornness on Bai Su's face, as if she was going to continue pestering them, he waved his hand and a large gust of wind lifted Bai Su's body instantly, sending her straight out of the 9th summit. Su Ming closed his eyes in the cave abode, as if he hadn't heard anything that had happened outside. However, for some reason, a hint of anxiety appeared within his heart. After a long while, he opened his eyes and looked at the blue sky outside his cave. So, Sima Xin, will you be using her to engage in another battle with me? Su Ming mumbled. Accurately speaking, he had already fought against Sima Xin 3 times. The first time was in Han Mountain City. Sima Xin then took over Fang Emu's body with his spirit and fought against Su Ming. He won, but also lost at the same time. It could be said that the battle ended with a draw. The second battle was within Freezing Sky Clan, and it was the fight that shocked the sky and earth. It might have seemed like they tied in the end, but in truth, Su Ming had lost, though at the same time, he had also won. This battle could also be said to have ended with a draw. The third battle was the one where they used the rod snake's life as the hook, and the two of them had engaged in a battle of wits that while had neither changed the weather nor shook the earth was still incredibly dangerous. This battle did not end in a draw. Su Ming had won hands down. Right now, Bai Su's arrival made Su Ming understand that this girl was the stage for the fourth battle between Sima Xin and himself. If the prodigious Sima Xin made this hand, then it was clear that he had already made thorough preparations for this. Great art of Heartless Berserker Seed, this art is incredibly mysterious. By linking all your actions together, your goal has been revealed to me clearly like an open book. You want to plant a berserker seed within me. Su Ming looked at the sky beyond his cave and his eyes sparkled. If I don't fight, then I will lose, unless I can forget her. If I fight, then I will fall into your plans and will find myself unable to escape. Su Ming closed his eyes. He lifted his right hand and started drawing slowly on the drawing board before him. Gradually, a picture that only he could see clearly appeared. When Su Ming's final stroke was made and he opened his eyes, he saw that he had drawn out the faint figure of a person on the drawing board. That person had his head lowered and was looking at the grass underneath his feet, but when he lifted his right foot, grass entangled that appendage of his. That grass was very fragile and would shatter the moment he continued lifting his foot, but that person simply lowered his head and looked at it for a long, long time. As Su Ming looked at the picture in his cave, Tian Xiezi opened his eyes in his cave at the top of the mountain and looked in the direction of Su Ming. You're about to experience your first change of heart. Worry appeared on Tian Xiezi's face. Chapter 255, Do you know how to fight with arts? Su Ming looked at the picture for a long time before he picked up the drawing board and turned it over to keep the picture with him. Before the person in the picture lifted his foot and shattered the grass, Su Ming would no longer draw on the face of the drawing board but on its back. He still did not have clear thoughts on how he would fight against Sima Xin in this battle, or how he would dissolve the threat, and how he would win. This battle might perhaps be the final battle between him and Sima Xin in Freezing Sky Clan before he joined Sky Mist Shaman Hunt. The quiet night went by slowly just like that. This night Su Ming did not draw. He sat within his cave with his eyes closed slightly. As he breathed, the person in the snow from his memories would appear in his head. Gradually, Su Ming gained a vague form of understanding in his heart. He had a feeling that the battle with Sima Xin this time was not what was important here. The key lay within the girl called Bai Su, and the main point was that she had Bai Ling's wildness in her exact same face. What was important was that if Su Ming did not prepare himself, then many a times he would mistake her for Bai Ling for a brief instant. The main point was that his heart seemed to be about ready to experience a transformation. This transformation did not come suddenly. It would seem that it had been lying dormant since the beginning within him and was just building up, and now that it had accumulated enough power, that transformation needed to break through. The morning sun scattered into the cave through the entrance and covered the area before Su Ming. Along with the sunlight was a girl's voice that traveled in from outside the cave. "Even if you chase me away today, I'll come every day." Once the voice reached the cave, it quickly fell silent. Su Ming knew that Ziche had once again chased her out of the 9th summit. Yet it did not last long before Bai Su's voice appeared once again. "Su Ming, if you don't dare face me, then there will be something that will be forever lacking in your heart." The entire day passed by slowly with incidents like this happening again and again, and it continued right up till the evening. When Bai Su was once again chased away by Ziche, she found that she could barely withstand the attacks any longer and coughed out a mouthful of blood. Ziche hesitated. He never expected that there would be someone who would be so persistent. Throughout the day, Bai Su had come up the mountain 17 times. Only when she coughed up blood and was injured was she forced to leave. Ziche looked at the blood on the ice, then turned his gaze towards Su Ming's cave. The cave was quiet, no sound coming from within. Ziche remained silent for a moment and then sat down nearby. The next day, Bai Su came once again. On this day, she came up the mountain 19 times before she eventually coughed up blood and with a pale face found herself no longer be able to come up the mountain. This continued right up to the evening of the 3rd day. When Bai Su came to Su Ming's cave the 20th time and stood before Ziche, he lifted his right hand, but found himself unable to wave it. The girl before his eyes was incredibly pale and her body swayed, but the persistence in her eyes and the tenacity in her bones made Ziche hesitate. Although they stood on different sides, Ziche had grown to respect the Bai Su standing before him. During these 3 days, she had come up the mountain more than 50 times and was chased out more than 50 times, but she still persisted. The more she was chased away, the stronger the persistence in her eyes became. Ziche did not doubt for even a moment that if he chased her away again and, while she might find herself to possess no more strength to climb up the mountain again on this day, she would still come on the next day even though she was injured. If this continued for a long period of time, no matter how good this girl's body was, she would not be able to last. Besides, she was only at the awakening realm. By the looks of it, the girl had not even managed to draw her awakened berserker mark yet. Ziche looked at Bai Su and asked with a bitter laugh, "Why? You can continue chasing me away, but I will persevere." Bai Su's voice was very weak when she spoke. She turned her head around and glanced towards the direction where the 1st summit lay. "The more times you go there, the more anxious he will be, and the more injured you are, the more hurt he will feel. He cannot become merciless and forget. Of this, I am certain. But Bai Su, I don't want you to do this, because my heart will hurt even more." Sima Shin's gentle voice echoed within Bai Su's heart. The determination and tenacity within her eyes became stronger. Ziche let out a long sigh and lifted his right hand. He was Su Ming's mountain guard and he had to obey Su Ming's orders. He did not dare disobey his words. He was just about to chase this stubborn girl away again when a calm voice came from within the cave. "What is the purpose of you coming up the mountain so many times? Let us hear it." Once Su Ming's words reached them, Ziche let out a sigh of relief. He pitied this girl slightly. He might not know much, but he still knew that this girl must have come here because of Sima Shin. Bai Su looked at the cave where Su Ming was and stated firmly, "I want to learn how to draw. If you don't teach me, then I will come here every day. Either I will die, or you will agree to it someday." Bai Su's voice may have been weak, but the determination in it did not leave room for doubt. She would do what she just said. The cave was silent for a long time before Su Ming's voice came in a manner as if he was speaking while sighing. "Is it worth it? This has nothing to do with you." Bai Su did not speak, but the determination in her eyes did not decrease even one bit. "There is indeed a girl in my memories that looks incredibly like you. You appear time and again and tear apart the wounds in my memories. Is this what you are doing to help Sima Shin?" Su Ming's murmurs floated out of the cave. Bai Su fell silent. The determined look within her eyes was tainted slightly by hesitance, but soon, that hesitation disappeared. You were the one who snatched Big Brother Ma's treasure away first. Bai Su gritted her teeth, but before she finished speaking, a huge gust of wind gushed out of the cave and swept her away from the mountain. Su Ming stared at the drawing board before him in his cave and lowered his right hand calmly. The sky outside gradually darkened until night came. During this night, the ninth summit was enveloped in silence. Perhaps Su Ming's second senior brother was walking around the mountain like a ghost and looking for the person he thought was stealing his plants. Perhaps his third senior brother was hiding in a corner with a mysterious grin as he peeked at something and thought of himself as the smartest person around. Perhaps his eldest senior brother was still within the ice river, unable to tell whether it was day or night. In this quiet, he would silently meditate in isolation. Su Ming closed his eyes and brought out the broken shuan made of bone from the storage bag he kept in his bosom. This shuan was very difficult to repair and could no longer form any sound. It was placed beside Su Ming's mouth and he quietly blew into it. Silence. Yet in his own ears, Su Ming could still hear that moaning melody. The sound surrounded his body and enveloped his heart, and lingered there for a long time. He did not know how much time passed by. The moon beyond the cave shone with a gentle light, illuminating the ice mountain, and the mountain shone with a multitude of colors due to the refraction of light. In this quiet night, Su Ming blew into the soundless shuan and silently let himself experience the peace that was different from drawing. When he finished playing a song, an old voice reached his ears. Not bad. The moment he heard the voice, Su Ming opened his eyes quickly and his heart instantly started racing against his chest. A person had entered his cave at some unknown point of time, and he had no knowledge about this. This person wore a long purple robe and stood with his back facing Su Ming. Some rays of moonlight shone on him and seemed to be causing the purplish color on his robes to evaporate. It formed a strange sort of pressure that not only shrouded the entire cave, but also dyed Su Ming's pupils with that color. Purple long robes, purple hair, a purple figure, but with a familiar voice. Greetings, Master. Su Ming immediately stood up and bowed towards the person who still had his back turned towards him. Su Ming may have acted like how he usually would and nothing unusual could be seen from his actions, but there was already a raging storm within his heart. That storm was not due to Tian Xiezi's sudden arrival, neither was it because Su Ming had not noticed him sooner. Instead, it was because Tian Xiezi was wearing purple robes. Su Ming had never seen Tian Xiezi in this state before. The words his second senior brother had said that day appeared in his head as if Su Ming was listening to him talk about Master in purple robes once again. He also remembered the grave expression on his second senior brother's face that day. This was not the only thing that shocked Su Ming. There was also the matter of the shuan. It was originally soundless, and that sound only existed within his memories, yet Tian Xiezi's words from before came right at the instant the melody within Su Ming's heart and memories disappeared. Was this a coincidence, or was it? Su Ming looked at the back of his purple-robed master and instinctively took one step backwards. Are you afraid? The purple-robed Tian Xiezi still had not turned around. His voice sounded old, but at the same time, it held a bloody quality to it. Su Ming could instantly sense it clearly. This bloodiness was that of a feeling of blood that had coagulated on the robes since a long time ago, but also, of blood that had just stained his robes. There was a bloody stench coming from a spot at the hem of his master's purple robes. This bloody stench was not a feeling. Su Ming could smell it from the start. This was not Tian Xiezi's blood. It was clear that before Tian Xiezi came here, he spilled someone's blood. Su Ming was silent for a moment before he answered honestly, Master, I've never seen you wear long purple robes before. I'm just a little unused to it. Do not be afraid, you'll get used to it. The bloodiness in Tian Xiezi's voice became stronger abruptly. He turned around slowly and with eyes that looked like burning torches, he looked at Su Ming. At the moment he turned around, Su Ming immediately saw clearly that Tian Xiezi's originally kindly face now looked like ice. His expression was chilling and his face somber, but there was no ill will in his eyes. Su Ming thought he saw an illusionary sea of blood behind his master. Within that sea of blood was a stone statue. That stone statue had its arms wrapped around its chest. Its eyes were opened, and it was similarly looking at Su Ming without ill will. My fourth disciple, do you know how to fight against others with arts? Tian Xiezi asked in a hoarse voice, looking at Su Ming. As he spoke, a hint of brutality appeared on the corners of his lips. That brutality was not aimed towards Su Ming. It was as if that sentence affected Tian Xiezi's heart and caused his emotions to fluctuate. Chapter 256, Crack. I do not. These two phrases had two completely different meanings. They were like two extremes, like the sky and the earth, and they made Su Ming feel as if his thoughts froze up in that instant. It was not as if he had not been prepared for this. Even now, his second senior brother's words and advice were still ringing in his ears. You must say, you don't know. This was what his second senior brother had said with a grave expression. Su Ming was silent. The two different answers were like two different doors standing before him. He did not know what lay behind those doors, and neither did he know which door he should choose to open to see the world that lay behind it. Tian Xiezi did not press him for an answer. He simply looked at him and waited for his decision. Su Ming had a feeling that he should listen to his second senior brother's advice. After all, the grave expression on his face when he recounted that he had given the wrong answer was an expression that was rarely seen on his face. However, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes and he lifted his head to look at the purple-robed Tian Xiezi, who was watching him, and slowly said, Master, I'd like to witness a battle of arts. This was Su Ming's answer. He went around the question of whether he knew or did not know and stepped out of that circle by voicing out his own thoughts. He did not bother about what would happen if he chose to answer yes or no. Instead, he spoke words that were clearly different from what his second senior brother had told him. The very instant Tian Xiezi heard those words, a brilliant glare appeared within his eyes. That glare instantly illuminated the entire cave and caused Su Ming to be unable to meet his gaze. There was also a sharp stab of pain in his eyes, and he took a few steps back instinctively. Looks like my fourth disciple is quite ambitious. Tian Xiezi's voice was hoarse and filled with a hint of ghastliness. As his voice echoed in the cave, a hint of brutality could be felt from within it. Your eldest senior brother answered with a no, and your second senior brother answered with a yes. As for your third senior brother, he did not give me an answer, he simply pretended to be asleep. You're the only one who did not answer the question as it is and gave me another answer. I will fulfill your desire and let you see exactly what is called a battle of arts. Tian Xiezi waved his arm and a layer of purple fog instantly appeared out of nowhere. It charged towards Su Ming, and in the blink of an eye it enveloped him, and with an abrupt shrinking, the fog stuck to Su Ming's robes and body, turning his clothes purple. At the same time, all of his hair turned purple as well. With that, the master and disciple within the cave were dressed completely in purple. That purple tint exuded a feeling of bloodiness that seemed to have gathered and sunk into the body. It was a feeling that made Su Ming's heart race and his body explode with an urge to kill that was difficult to suppress. There was already a murderous aura within him to begin with. That murderous aura came from the blood moon from his berserker mark. Right then, under the impact of the purple tint, that murderous aura exploded forth with a much stronger intensity and filled the entire cave. A surprised glint appeared in Tian Xiezi's eyes before he laughed boisterously and closed his right hand around the air in the direction towards Su Ming. Instantly, Su Ming was taken away and they disappeared from the cave. Although the murderous aura coming from within them was shocking, Ziche, who was sitting outside, did not notice anything. In fact, even Hu Zi and Su Ming's second senior brother did not notice anything. Only Su Ming's eldest senior brother who had isolated himself under the ice river opened his eyes to small slits, but he soon closed them once again. The air in the sky above the land of South Morning distorted, and Tian Xiezi and Su Ming appeared from within. Su Ming's right wrist was in Tian Xiezi's hand and he was forcefully being dragged. His entire body was in severe pain. Su Ming's face was slightly pale. When he appeared, he instantly turned his head around, and he saw that there was nothing behind him. The land seemed endless. It might be night, but he could still somewhat see that the land was covered in green grass. This place was not Freezing Sky Clan. Su Ming widened his eyes and shock could be seen within them. The relocation rune may be good, but before there were any relocation runes within the Berserker tribe, How exactly did the powerful berserkers move around? Only those who respect those from the other realms will imitate, learn, and research foreign objects. It is an act where they discard their roots and place their attention on something not essential to them. Tian Xiezi let out a cold snort. If a berserker reaches the peak of the berserker soul realm, then with just one step, they can relocate anywhere they want and travel through the world. As long as their bodies are not destroyed, they will never breathe their last. Su Ming felt shaken. He looked at Tian Xiezi and found himself incapable of saying anything even after a long while. I cannot do it either, but with the creation arts, as long as the distance is not too far, I can travel to all the places I went to before if I take an item from the place. However, I must be dressed in purple to use this art. Tian Xiezi spoke hoarsely and let go of his grip on Su Ming's wrist. A fierce and cruel look appeared within his eyes and he looked towards the land. Seventh junior brother, do you know how to battle with arts? With Tian Xiezi's sudden words, Su Ming lowered his head and cast his gaze towards where Tian Xiezi was looking. That place was a grassy plains. There was wind blowing through it at the moment, causing rustling sounds to rise from the grass. Apart from that sound, everything else was silent. After a long while, a sigh came from the depths of the land. You're early, fourth senior brother. The moment the sigh came, Su Ming saw the grass in the plains wither away and scatter into the wind in the form of dust. The land trembled, and with a boom, a giant crack opened up in the land as if it was ripped open by two invisible hands. The crack was deep, its end nowhere to be seen. It was dark within, but a brilliant gaze appeared within the crack and it looked towards the sky. That gaze fell on Tian Xiezi and Su Ming. When that gaze landed on him, Su Ming's entire body instantly fell cold, but soon, a bloody red light shone from his right eye, and it fused together with the purple robes covering his body, turning into a murderous aura that seemed to be facing off with the gaze. Fourth senior brother, is that your new disciple? An ancient voice asked from the crack on the ground. The moment his murderous aura met the gaze, a bang went off in Su Ming's head. His murderous aura seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure. However, that gaze did not harbor any ill will. It only swept through his body once before turning away. Su Ming's breathing immediately quickened and he wrapped his fist in his palm before bowing to the land. I am Su Ming. Greetings, seventh uncle master. Tian Xiezi let out a cold harumph before he took a step forward and, in the blink of an eye, he appeared right outside the crack on the ground. He stomped there. Immediately, an illusionary sea of blood appeared behind Tian Xiezi. A brilliant glare formed in the eyes of the stone statue within the sea of blood. It slowly unfolded its arms, which had been wrapped around its chest. At the same time, Su Ming saw the gaze within the crack on the ground disappearing. In its place, a frail-looking person walked out of the crack. His footsteps were not quick, but with each step he took, Su Ming's vision would distort. The man took 5 steps and arrived right under Tian Xiezi's foot. He suddenly lifted his right hand, clenched his fist, and rammed it against Tian Xiezi's right foot. At the same time, a gigantic illusion appeared behind the man. Within that illusion were a countless number of people, men and women, the old and the young, and they were all kneeling on the ground worshipping this person. The ghosts of the land's power is not what we berserkers practice. Seventh junior brother, you're still practicing the arts of the other worlds. This is not creation. The moment Tian Xiezi's hoarse voice appeared, his right foot crashed into that frail person's fist with a bang. As the bang reverberated in the air and shook the skies, Tian Xiezi shuddered and staggered back 100-something feet. However, the frail person within the crack staggered back a few hundred feet before he managed to stop. You were also chased out by our master. The creation you seek has already left the ways of the berserker tribe. You are the same as me. What do you mean by the same? Tian Xiezi did not act again, but his eyes were filled with a piercing light. I practiced the skills from the other worlds and used them to create my own path. This is my creation. What you practice is something that appeared after combining the skills from the shaman tribe. What difference is there between us? Our minds are different, our spirits are different, our realms are different, everything of us from inside out is different. We are completely different. 15 years ago, you could fight me to a draw while I was in my purple-robed self. Now, 15 years later, you can no longer win against the me in this state. Since we cannot differentiate clearly who is right or wrong, and what constitutes as creation and what is not through words, then we will just see who is stronger. You are wrong. Tian Xiezi swung his arm out and turned to walk towards Su Ming. Su Ming was breathing rapidly. This was the first time he saw Tian Xiezi attack. The power from that one stomp just now gave him an indescribable feeling. It was as if the mysteriousness within that stomp had exceeded the limits of his understanding. He wanted to remember it, but the memory of the stomp in his head and when the frail person hurled his fist forward was slowly disappearing, and he could not control it. When Tian Xiezi went over to Su Ming's side and brought him away from the place, he was still caught in a daze. When Tian Xiezi and Su Ming left, peace returned to the plains, and the frail-looking man lowered his head. He slowly floated back into the crack and sat down within its depths. Fourth senior brother, when you were excommunicated, Master once said that you were wrong. That ancient voice turned into a sigh and the crack gradually closed up. Once the earth returned to its original state, an endless sea of grass covered the entire plains again within an instant and began rustling in the wind. Dark clouds covered the entire sky and rain fell as thunder rumbled. The sky twisted and Su Ming and Tian Xiezi's bodies gradually appeared. The instant the two of them appeared, lightning cracked in the sky viciously and thunder roared. Tian Xiezi had his back turned towards Su Ming and he looked at a fenced-up tribe before him through the rain as he asked Su Ming languidly, "Do you understand now?" Su Ming was silent and his expression baffled. He seemed to have understood it somewhat, but there was still a great cloud of confusion within him. "Let's go." Tian Xiezi walked forward and then landed on the ground. He stepped on the puddles of water on the ground. With the rain falling on his body, he walked towards the quiet fenced-up village in the rain. Su Ming followed behind him silently. At that moment, the figure of Tian Xiezi stomping on the ground had become very faint in his mind. He couldn't remember it, and neither could he retain it. As they got closer to the village, Su Ming heard a faint sound. Crack, crack, crack. It was as a sound that seemed to be made from bones rubbing against each other. That sound traveled forth through the rain and thunder from the ordinary village. Chapter 257. The song ended, and they left. Tian Xiezi's expression was still dark. When he got closer to the gate in the village, he did not slow down. Right when he stepped next to it, Su Ming's pupils shrank as he continued walking behind him. He saw the village gate distorting, as if they had just been moved to another place in an instant without any warning. Tian Xiezi walked in slowly. Su Ming followed behind and walked into the village as well. When the two of them went in, Su Ming turned his head back and found that the village gate had returned to its original state. It was clear that this was not the first time Tian Xiezi had come to this place. At this time, most of the people in the tribe had fallen into deep sleep. Since it was raining, there were no bonfires around them. Besides the pattering rain and occasional rumble of thunder in this silence, the only other sound was that cracking sound that rang repeatedly. It was as if that sound was guiding Tian Xiezi's path as he walked through the village and stepped on the puddles of water. Once they gradually moved past the houses, Su Ming saw light shining through an ordinary beast skin tent before him. This was a small tribe, a tribe that was almost similar in size to Su Ming's Dark Mountain tribe. Small tribes like these numbered to too many in the land of South Morning. He looked around him, and when Su Ming's gaze fell upon the tent with light shining within, he could hear the cracking sounds that seemed like bones being rubbed against each other. Tian Xiezi walked up to the tent and lifted a flap before walking in. Su Ming followed behind him and also entered the tent. When he did so, the first thing that entered his gaze was the many bones that lay within the small tent. Besides the bones, there were also some stones in the tent, and most of these items had been turned into shuans. This was the first time Su Ming had seen so many shuans. It was also the first time he saw a shuan in the land of South Morning. A shiver ran down his spine. Once he swept his gaze past those shuans, it fell on the old man in the tent. The old man's hair was flecked with white and he was dressed in beast skins, though he did not cover the upper half of his body. Right now, he was sitting inside the tent with a beast bone in his hand and was rubbing it against a stone slab. It seemed like the shape of this beast bone did not match with the bone Shuan he wanted to make, that was why he had to rub away the unnecessary parts. With a dark expression, Tian Shiezi looked at the old man and walked until he was right in front of him and sat down. His gaze shifted to the beast bone in the old man's hands, which he was still rubbing against the stone slab. The old man looked calm. It was as if all his attention was trained on the bone in his hands and he did not notice Tian Shiezi's arrival, nor did he notice Su Ming's presence. He sat there calmly and continued rubbing the bone against the stone slab. Cracking sounds echoed within the tent. Some of the sounds even floated out and lingered in the air for a long time. Time trickled by. Su Ming's eyes never left the bone in the old man's hands, and he saw that a corner of that bone gradually became round under that continuous rubbing. Tian Shiezi never spoke. He was also looking at the old man, and changes started to show on his face. Sometimes, he would appear sullen, at other times, he would look as if he understood something, and occasionally, there would be a complicated expression on his face. Rain poured even harder outside the tent. Thunder would occasionally rumble in the sky, and sometimes, the sky would brighten up for a brief moment and leave the shadows of the three people on the skin of the tent, but they would flicker and quickly vanish. The old man's concentration made Su Ming arrive at some form of understanding. He did not know at what point of time he eventually chose not to stand but sit by the side and watch the bone being rubbed against the stone slab while listening to the cracking sounds. At that moment, the calmness that had never appeared ever since Bai Su had come to the 9th summit overtook him. At that moment, Su Ming sank into a state that felt as if he had forgotten about his self due to his calm gaze towards the bone. In his eyes, he could only see the bone that was being rubbed against the stone slab. He did not see that the clothes on Tian Shiezi's body seemed to be changing as he sat right before the old man. That change only happened for an instant before returning to its original state. If no one paid close attention to it, they would not be able to see it clearly. Time trickled by. They had no idea how much time passed, but the old man eventually stopped in his act of rubbing the bone against the stone. When he stopped, Su Ming felt his mind jolting back and came back to his senses. He saw the old man looking at the beast stone and lifting it up as if he was inspecting it. After a long while, he changed the beast bone's position and continued rubbing it against the stone slab. The complicated look on Tian Shiezi's face grew deeper. After a long while, he let out a long sigh and stood up. The moment he stood, the old man stopped. When he lifted the bone in his hands once again, that bone had already turned into a Shuan. There were several small holes in it. Once he gave it a look, he lifted his head, but he did not look at Tian Shiezi. Instead, he trained his gaze on Su Ming. It was a gaze that was as tranquil as water. Those were a pair of eyes that seemed to contain endless knowledge, had seen through the truth behind life and death, understood all that lies within the world, and could contain everything within them. Inside were kindness, peace, tranquility, and a light that made Su Ming fall into a state of serenity once he met his gaze. The old man lifted his right hand and handed the bone Shuan to Su Ming. Su Ming quietly stood up and took the ordinary-looking bone Shuan in his hands respectfully. At the instant the old man handed the Shuan to Su Ming, he suddenly understood the meaning behind the old man's gaze towards him. He wanted him to play it. Su Ming held the bone Shuan and wordlessly took a few steps back before he sat on the ground and stared at the Shuan in his hands blankly. The sound of rain falling outside became stronger and thunder started rumbling non-stop in the sky. Su Ming closed his eyes and positioned the bone Shuan by his mouth before blowing into it gently. He originally did not know how to play any songs on the Shuan, but over the years, the broken bone Shuan that could no longer make any sound had kept him company during the nights when he was alone and missing his home. There were many nights where he would blow into the voiceless Shuan quietly alone and the melody of the songs in his ears would play inside his mind. Moaning sounds that held a hint of desolation traveled out from the bone Shuan by Su Ming's mouth and echoed around the tent before floating out and scattering into the air. At that moment, it was as if the thunder outside also fell silent and the rain started falling more gently. They fused together with the moaning song of the Shuan and played out a song of yearning. Su Ming was bringing out this particular Shuan's voice, but was also playing out the song in his memories. The one that was making the sounds was the breath from his mouth, moving within the Shuan, but similarly, his heart also moved. That feeling was a form of remembrance of the things that moved through the passages of time. That moaning sound did not seem to ever change. There was only one simple note, yet its rise and fall had a hint of desolation and age in it. In that quiet night, in the falling rain, and in this unfamiliar land, that sound was brought into existence. It sounded like a lover crying softly, like tribe members calling out to someone as they wiped away the tears from their eyes, like a childhood friend roaring out in anger as he clenched his fists. Tian Xiezi closed his eyes and listened to the sound of the shuan quietly. As he listened to the moaning sounds, the dark expression on his face faded away. The old man also closed his eyes. His expression was calm. This was a very long song. It might have had a name, but Su Ming did not know it. This song had been played multiple times in his memories, but this time, he truly played it out with a shuan. However, this was not his shuan. The song played by this shuan contained his soul and his memories, but it lacked a feeling, the feeling of home. The song ended. Su Ming opened his eyes and looked at the bone shuan in his hands. Understanding appeared in his eyes and he stood up so that he could return the shuan back to the old man respectfully. A smile appeared on the old man's face. He looked at Su Ming kindly and nodded his head. Tian Xiezi also opened his eyes. He did not look at the old man but chose to stand and walk out. Right up till the end, no words were exchanged between him and the old man, but Su Ming knew that the two of them had in truth spoken 1,000 words to each other through Su Ming's song. When Tian Xiezi walked out, Su Ming hesitated for a moment before he followed after him. The two of them left the tent. Rain was pouring heavily from the sky, and it fell on their bodies and on the puddles of water that were formed from the holes on the ground. When they were a dozen feet away from the tent, Su Ming's footsteps faltered. His gaze was no longer hesitant but filled with determination. When he stopped, Tian Xiezi also stopped with him, but he did not turn back to look at Su Ming. Su Ming bowed towards Tian Xiezi and went back towards the tent he had just left. He lifted the flap and went in. When Su Ming walked into the tent, the old man sitting inside looked over calmly. "Sir, can you repair this?" Su Ming brought out his bone shuan from his bosom. This was the shuan that held the feeling of home. It had many cracks and could no longer make any sound. Su Ming placed it before the old man. The old man's gaze fell on the shuan and he picked it up. Once he gave it closer inspection, he nodded. Su Ming bowed towards him respectfully before turning around and leaving the tent. Then he left the village with Tian Xiezi. "Do you understand now?" Tian Xiezi asked calmly outside the village in the rain. At that moment, though he might still have been dressed in purple, his expression was no longer dark. "The first battle was a confirmation with the ways of your own cultivation, and the second," Su Ming looked at Tian Xiezi and fell silent for a moment before speaking up again, "it's a battle of hearts. The first person who battled against me is my 7th fellow brother. The person who we saw in the second scene, I don't know his name, but I met him by pure coincidence many years ago and saw him creating a shuan once. After that, every single time I experience a change in my heart, I will look for him and battle against him using my heart and my realm. You reached an epiphany regarding picture creation and used it to calm your mind. You do not train your physical body but only train your mind. Perhaps there are other people I do not know of who are walking down this road, but among the people I know, you and I, along with your fellow brothers, are the only ones doing so. I've come quite far, and your fellow brothers have also taken a few steps down the road. Right now, you are about to experience your first change of heart. The change in your heart is akin to another you appearing," Tian Xiezi explained softly. "There is no way for me to tell you how to do it. I can only tell you about my experiences regarding my changes of heart. Let's go, I'll bring you to kill shamans in the shaman tribe. Once I'm dressed in purple, this state will not disappear until I've gathered 1,000 drops of blood from the heart." Tian Xiezi took a step into the air. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath and mumbled the words, "Change of heart," softly under his breath before a glint appeared in his eyes and he followed behind Tian Xiezi. As the master and disciple disappeared into the sky, Tian Xiezi murmured to Su Ming faintly, "He is blind. Did you manage to see it?" "Blind." Su Ming was stunned, and they left. Chapter 258, The Land of Shamans. There was a wall built on a mountain range shaped like a dragon's spine. It resembled a ring and split the land of South Morning into two parts, the outer and inner parts. That mountain range was known as Sky Mist Barrier. Sky Mist City acted as the center of Sky Mist Barrier. The wall was divided into several equal sections, and each section had a guard that would be stationed there all year long. No matter the 4 seasons, no matter how cold or hot the weather was, and no matter how harshly the rain fell, they would not step out of the area which they protected. All the shamans who wished to pass through the section of Sky Mist Barrier they protected to break into Sky Mist would have to walk over the corpses of these guards. Uncle Master Bai was one of the guards. He would always sit on the section of the wall he protected and look in the direction of where the shaman tribes were located. Sometimes, he would seem melancholic, and at other times, there would be a complicated look on his face. The sky was starting to brighten up, but the land was still shrouded in darkness and fog. He could not see too far into the distance. Uncle Master Bai lowered his head and closed his eyes, hiding away the emotions in his eyes. Yet at the moment his eyelids fully closed down, he opened his eyes once again swiftly, and a brilliant glint appeared briefly within them. At the same time, the sky behind him twisted and 2 purple-clad people walked out from within the distortion. These 2 people were naturally Tian Xiezi and Su Ming. Uncle Master Bai frowned, but he did not turn his head back. Instead, he closed his eyes once again and let the purple-robed Tian Xiezi approach him, then walk past him and out of Sky Mist Barrier. Su Ming followed behind Tian Xiezi and met his Uncle Master Bai once again on the wall. He did not know why, but he felt relieved when he saw the man. He still remembered that he had spoken to this Uncle Master Bai at this place, and this man, who gained his respect and gave him a sense of closeness, had later fought against a woman of the shaman tribe. The 2 people had stirred up a vast and mighty presence as they fought, causing the Su Ming at that time to be unable to remain close. He had always been somewhat worried about the man. Now that he saw him again, when Su Ming walked past his Uncle Master Bai, he turned his head around and smiled at him. When he did so, the man opened his eyes and cast a glance at him. "You must be able to protect yourself if you follow that crazy old man." As he spoke, he seized the air with his right hand. A white scale the size of a fingernail instantly appeared out of thin air, and he pushed it towards Su Ming. "Take this. It contains the power of an attack of mine. Use it to defend yourself." Once Uncle Master Bai finished speaking, he closed his eyes. When Su Ming held the white scale in his hands, it started gushing with life force and lifted his spirits. He wrapped his fist in his palm towards Uncle Master Bai. He might have only met the person before him twice, but that sense of cordiality he felt towards the man did not fade due to them not meeting up often. It became even stronger instead. The moment Su Ming walked out of Sky Mist Barrier, he took a deep breath. The bloodiness and desolate feeling he had had when he first stood on Sky Mist Barrier and looked out appeared once again in his heart. This land was an unfamiliar place to him. It contained the hatred between 2 different races that could not be wiped away. This hate had lingered in this place for a long time, and had eventually turned into a depressing and heavy feeling that pressed against all the hearts of the berserkers who just walked into the land. That depressing feeling would make their breathing quicken to the point they would feel as if they could not breathe and would suffocate at any moment. As Su Ming and Tian Xiezi charged forward in an insolent manner, that feeling became stronger. The further they got, the stronger the feeling became, until eventually Su Ming could even hear his heart racing and pounding against his chest. The wind that was blowing against him from the distance seemed to contain a force that rejected all those unfamiliar to the land. It was as if it also contained the same hate from the land towards the 2 unwelcomed guests. It was a force that spoke of killing and slaughter until one side eventually died once the berserkers met with the shamans. Compared to the depressing and oppressive feeling Su Ming had, the brutality on Tian Xiezi's face became stronger. His ruthless smile, the blood-red glint in his eyes, and the hint of merciless aloofness that was deeply seated in his eyes turned Tian Xiezi into a man that was incredibly unfamiliar to Su Ming. As Su Ming continued watching him, Tian Xiezi suddenly came to a halt and froze floating in midair. The sky was bleak and was starting to darken as if dark clouds were starting to gather together. Fourth, Tian Xiezi had his back turned towards Su Ming and was looking into the distance when he spoke in a ghastly tone. "Watch by the side and draw for me." Su Ming nodded quietly and took a few steps back. He looked at his surroundings and observed this strange and unfamiliar piece of land. His understanding of the hate between the shamans and berserkers was limited, and it was difficult for him to put himself in the shoes of the berserkers in this land. It was also difficult for him to comprehend the frenzied slaughter between the berserkers of the land of South Morning and the shamans. He did not understand. Tian Shiezi had his hands behind his back and his purple robes fluttered in the wind. His long purple hair also danced along. From the distance, he looked like a purple ball of flames that was burning brilliantly in the land of the shamans. A piercing howl abruptly came from Tian Shiezi's mouth, and at the moment he lifted his head and roared, Su Ming became visibly moved. At that moment, Tian Shiezi overflowed with an unbridled arrogance and a domineering air that seemed to ignore the might of the heavens. He stood in the sky and howled in a manner to make himself known. His voice traveled in all directions and rumbled as it spread even further into the distance. A twisted ripple appeared in the air as if the sky itself was trembling. The fear within the trembles seeped into the ripples and spread outwards. Su Ming took a deep breath. He knew that while this place might not be located deep within the land of shamans and was in fact located just at the border near Sky Mist Barrier, this was still the territory of the shamans. Almost all the tribes that existed within this place were shaman. If a person was alone, that person would have snuck into the shaman tribes and would have taken the 1,000 drops of blood from the heart in secret. That person would definitely not roar so arrogantly like his master and tell the shamans that he, Tian Shiezi, was here. Yet Tian Shiezi did it. With his body that looked like a ball of purple flames from the distance and with an incredibly arrogant manner, he announced his arrival to all the shamans within the area. Su Ming suddenly understood what Uncle Master Bai had meant when he called his master a crazy old man. He also understood why he gave him the white scale. It was clear that this was not the first time Tian Shiezi did such a thing, neither was it his second time. There was a high possibility that this thing happened regularly once in a while. If a race or even a tribe has been attacked like this multiple times over the years in a manner that while their mortal enemy considers it arrogant, but to them as a form of humiliation, then it would definitely attract a certain amount of attention. Once their attention is drawn, they would make thorough preparations towards their mortal enemy's actions. Master has come to this place multiple times, which could only mean that he must have experienced the shamans' prepared attack, but he still chose to do it, and he even told the shamans that he's here. As Su Ming was thinking, something caught his attention. He immediately lifted his head and looked into the distance, and at the moment he saw it, his pupils shrank. In the distance, he saw clouds rolling forth in the sky, and black spots were charging towards them rapidly. In the blink of an eye, those black spots became clear, and they were all ferocious beasts that mostly looked dissimilar to each other. These creatures were not entirely big. They were only about a dozen feet in size, and all of them had a pair of wings which they used to charge towards them. Su Ming also saw people standing on those beasts, and their faces were covered not in berserker marks, but totems that were carved onto their skins. Pay full attention to your drawing. The ruthlessness in the smile at the corner of Tian Shiezi's lips reached its peak and a murderous aura that shook the skies erupted from his body. Right at the moment he finished speaking, Tian Shiezi took a step forward. Behind him, the sea of blood that originally looked like a mere illusion now seemed as if it was real. Light appeared within the eyes of the stone statue in the sea of blood, and it shone with an excited lust for slaughter. With that lust for slaughter in Tian Shiezi's eyes, Su Ming saw him storm straight towards the incoming mass of black spots. Waves rose in the sea of blood behind him and charged towards the black spots. Roaring sounds reverberated in the air and Su Ming saw the same brutality and madness on the shamans' faces who were standing on the ferocious beasts. They did not fear death and all of them bit their tongues to cough out blood. That blood turned into an innumerable amount of blood-red bugs that charged straight towards Tian Shiezi. Some brought out skulls. As they stroked them, black mist shot out and turned into hideous malicious ghosts. Some sat down, and as the beasts underneath them let out shrill cries of pain, their blood and flesh were ripped apart from their bones. That large mass of torn flesh grouped together to form large blood-red giants, and they howled as they charged towards Tian Shiezi. The creatures that lost their flesh and blood only had eerily white skeletal frames left. However, There was a ghostly fire within their eye sockets that burned with an indescribable ghastliness and coldness. There were even dozens of shamans who stomped on the ferocious beasts underneath them and bounded into the air. Their bodies instantly swelled up and a shocking power erupted from their bodies, turning their physical bodies into their strongest enchanted vessels. They too charged towards Tian Xiezi. Su Ming looked at the sight. All these divine abilities were skills he had never seen before, especially the spell that created the giants formed from flesh and blood while still allowing the creatures to continue living even though they lost their bodies, only their skeletons remaining. It made Su Ming suck in a deep breath. You actually used the spirit medium of the shaman tribe. Looks like you've made even better preparations for my arrival today. You must have waited for many years. Today, I have finally come, and you don't have to wait anymore. Tian Xiezi's ghastly laughter rang in the skies. Roaring sounds shook the sky. Multiple sights appeared at once within Su Ming's vision, and in them, Tian Xiezi was slaughtering those shamans arrogantly and without restraint. The blood bugs that were formed from the coughed-out blood stuck themselves on Tian Xiezi's body, but they instantly turned purple and exploded. Right at the moment the hideous malicious ghosts that came from the skulls closed in on Tian Xiezi, the stone statue within the sea of blood opened its mouth wide, sucked in a deep breath, and the malicious ghosts tumbled into its mouth. Once the stone statue swallowed them all, the brutality and excitement in its eyes grew thicker. Chapter 259. That spoken sentence, Golden Rock. As the giants formed from the flesh and blood of the ferocious beasts charged towards Tian Xiezi, he was also closing in on them with a savage look on his face. They crashed into each other with a bang, and those giants shattered, but Tian Xiezi merely continued onward while laughing madly. All the shamans that stood in the area he passed by would find a bloody hole appearing on their chests, and there was emptiness inside the hole. Their hearts were gone. Their hearts were dug out by Tian Xiezi. Once he crushed them, the blood from their hearts fused into the air and appeared inside his sea of blood. When he saw this sight, Su Ming sucked in a sharp breath. He looked towards the sea of blood behind Tian Xiezi. That sea of blood. Could it have been created due to master slaughter? He mumbled. The dozen shamans who had swelled up, treating their physical bodies as their strongest weapon, with totems tattooed on their faces, hurled their fists forward with a force that made the air distort. Right at the moment these people attacked Tian Xiezi together, he waved his arm and the purple long robe on his body instantly grew bigger. In the blink of an eye, the purple robe covered the entire area, including the dozen shamans. This scene only lasted for an instant. When Tian Xiezi's purple robe reverted to its original size, bloody holes appeared on the chests of those men, and their hearts were all gone. The spirit medium of the shamans, the spirit medium who only pities the dead but is cold towards the living, I killed one of you before, and I love fighting against people like you the most. Today, let me slaughter to my heart's content. When Tian Xiezi let out an eerie bark of laughter, the sea of blood behind him turned into a giant mouth and opened it wide to swallow the shamans. The moment it swallowed the shamans, many of these shamans trembled, and as they did so, a fist appeared on their chests and started squirming there. Pain appeared on their faces and their chests exploded. Their hearts flew out of their chests and were crushed. Then the blood from their hearts spilled out and was absorbed into the mouth formed from the sea of blood. At that moment, a soft, cold snort appeared under the sky in the land belonging to the shamans. Su Ming immediately turned his gaze over and saw an old man in a black and white long robe walking on the land. He had no idea when he had appeared. The old man's hair was flecked in white, but his face was covered in a variety of colors and filled with tattoos. Su Ming looked at it and found himself unable to differentiate the totems on his face. The man stood there and did not even look at Su Ming. His gaze was focused on Tian Xiezi and he lifted his right hand to seize the sky. The moment he did so, the entire sky turned murky, as if the sky had just turned into mud. An oppressive feeling gathered on Su Ming and made his breathing instantly quicken. At the same time, Su Ming saw shadows appearing in the now turned murky sky. Those shadows all had pious expressions on their faces, and from their faces, Su Ming could tell that they were all the shamans whom Tian Xiezi had just killed by ripping out their hearts. These hundreds of souls covered the murky sky, and as the spirit medium seized the air, they charged towards his right hand like rolling smoke. In an instant, as they gathered on the spirit medium's right hand, a transparent drop of water appeared. That drop of water was crystal clear, yet the moment it appeared, a shocking chill spread in all directions. Tian Shiezi laughed coldly and turned around, stopping in his slaughter. The shamans who were fortunate enough to not have died in this massacre quickly retreated and began surrounding the area until they sealed it up. Su Ming was also sealed within the area. "I've waited for you here for 15 years. The spirit medium spoke with a hoarse voice. He grabbed the transparent drop of water floating before him and swallowed it. Once he did so, his body started trembling viciously and pain appeared on his face. "All you who died in sorrow, I, the spirit medium, have felt your resentment and sorrow. I am willing to use my body to shoulder your hate and anger. You died in this person's hands, now that you have died, come to my body." The moment the old man finished speaking, he started trembling even more viciously. As he started closing his eyes slowly, respect and fear appeared on the shamans who surrounded Su Ming and Tian Shiezi. Interesting, a spirit medium who confused souls actually came here. Tian Shiezi licked his lips and ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. Su Ming stood where he belonged. This slaughter had nothing to do with him, he did not need to take any action. With Tian Shiezi over there, no one would pay attention to him. After all, compared to Tian Shiezi, Su Ming was so weak he would not attract any attention to himself. At that moment, the spirit medium opened his eyes. His irises were gray, and at the very instant he opened his eyes, a roar that sounded like an innumerable amount of howls overlapping each other spilled out of his mouth. "Give me back my heart." As he roared, countless bumps immediately rose up on the old man's body. These bumps were all faces. These faces were howling and screeching on his skin, causing the old man to become a terrifying sight to behold. He stomped on the ground, and as it trembled, he flew up and charged towards Tian Shiezi. At the moment he got closer to Tian Shiezi, the old man lifted his arms, then pointed towards the sky with one arm while the other pointed towards the ground. He lifted his head to the sky and roared once again. "Give me back my heart." The weather changed. At the edge of the murky sky, a gigantic hand of bone appeared out of thin air. It charged towards Tian Shiezi with an air of decay. At the same time, another bone hand broke out of the earth, and the ground trembled. It too charged towards Tian Shiezi along with the bone hand from the sky. The ruthless glare in Tian Shiezi's eyes shone, and as the sea of blood behind him enveloped his body, the stone statue that had its arms folded around its chest within the sea of blood spread out its arms in a fashion that seemed slow but managed to clash into the two bone hands that were charging from the sky and earth with one palm facing upward and the other downward. A deafening roar instantly shook the entire world. The bone hand from the sky crumbled and shattered into millions of pieces that disappeared into the air. The bone hand from the ground also shuddered as if it could not withstand the palm strike from the stone statue. It shattered and fell like droplets of rain that scattered onto the ground. With a glint in his eyes, the spirit medium spread out his arms at the same moment the bone hands shattered and let out a piercing howl towards the sky. As he roared and his body trembled, the faces of the ghosts on his skin roared with him, and they charged out of the old man's body. As those ghosts charged out, the old man shuddered and his physical body rapidly withered away. In the span of a few breaths, he turned into mere skin and bones and fell face down to the ground. The final soul within his body also charged out at that moment. The sky was filled with the roars of these ghosts as they stormed towards Tian Shiezi. Tian Shiezi let out a cold snort and was about to counter when two soft sighs came faintly from the sky in the distance. The sighs were very gentle as if they held no rage within them and were so tender that they sounded like a lover blowing a puff of air on your cheek and into your ear. When it sounded, Su Ming turned his gaze in its direction and saw two men walking forth from the sky in the distance. Those were two men who were so beautiful that women would sigh because they could not compare to their beauty. They wore long white robes, and all men and women who looked at them would be attracted by their beautiful looks. Even more shocking was that the two of them came together with breathtaking smiles on their lips while holding hands, and they were walking forward with an air of intimacy as if they were lovers. Split dawn. For the first time, besides ruthlessness and excitement, seriousness appeared in Tian Shiezi's eyes. Even the rarely seen split dawn appeared here. Interesting, choosing a pair of split dawns is not an easy thing. The two beautiful men in white came forth with their hands still held together as if they were lovers. They looked at Tian Xiezi with eyes that shone with a beauty that did not seem to belong to this world. One of them spoke up softly, "I suppose there is a person without a heart around you, one that is formed by the spirits of those who were wronged." As his words traveled forth, the many ghosts charging towards Tian Xiezi suddenly spread out when they were about to close in. Then with Tian Xiezi serving as its chest, they turned into a gigantic figure. That figure was created entirely from the ghosts. They howled continuously, their voices echoing through the sky. "I suppose you can no longer move, no longer can cast any arts. You have become this person's heart, and then, you will shatter." The other beautiful man smiled and spoke softly. Su Ming widened his eyes and his pupils shrank once again. It could be said that this was the first time he encountered shamans. Here, he encountered the spirit medium who pitied the dead, but was cold towards the living. Right now, he saw the split dawn, who seemed to be in control of an unimaginable power. He even saw his master, Tian Xiezi, coming to a complete halt at that instant, just like what the split dawn said. The sea of blood around him started disappearing. A murderous look flashed through Su Ming's eyes and bell chimes reverberated within his body. The white scale appeared in his hands, and the green mark of the sword glowed at the center of his brows. His berserker mark appeared faintly on his body. Because not only did he see his master's body freeze, he also saw the figure formed by the ghosts that had surrounded Tian Xiezi gain the form of a person, and his master stood at the location where its heart should be. By the looks of it, it seemed like it wanted to bury Tian Xiezi within it. However, Su Ming also had his doubts. From what he understood about his master, if Tian Xiezi dared to make such a blatant show of his arrival, then he would definitely not act recklessly, but Su Ming just could not figure out what else his master could do. Su Ming was just about to take action during this crisis when a sound rang out. That sound made the expressions of the two beautiful split dawns drastically change. It made the old spirit medium who was lying on the ground in only skin and bones let out a cry of surprise, and made the shamans who had surrounded Su Ming and Tian Xiezi sink into disbelief. That sound came from Tian Xiezi. "My shaman beast, I summon you with my voice." As Tian Xiezi's voice echoed in the air, a low growl that shook the sky came from the land in the distance. A huge gust of wind swept through the land, and in the land far away, a gigantic golden rock appeared. By the looks of it, its size was about 10,000 feet. This is our sacred beast, the golden rock. You, who are you? Why do you know the sacred skill of the shamans? The old spirit medium lying on the ground let slip a cry of surprise with an expression filled with horrified surprise. Chapter 260, 3 Days. The old spirit medium let out a cry of surprise, and in the blink of an eye, that horrified surprise on his face changed to one of shock. He never expected that the person the big shaman tribes told him to kill with an army to possess a sacred beast of the shamans. The shock that came from witnessing a berserker summoning their sacred beast, the sacred beasts that rarely appeared even when the shamans themselves summoned them, was like that of lightning crashing onto him. The shock made his head roar, and besides surprise, his mind was completely blank. Besides the old spirit medium, the beautiful split dawns were also shocked. Their expressions instantly changed and disbelief colored their faces. This expression was incredibly rare on these two men. The two of them were sent to this place 15 years ago along with the old spirit medium, and their goal was to wait for the person who would appear in this area once every few years and bring about genocide. Everything was going smoothly when they ran into Tian Xiezi this day, but at the critical moment that one sentence from Tian Xiezi changed everything in a manner as if the world had been turned upside down. The sacred beast, golden rock, no wonder we never managed to gain its acknowledgement and could never summon it even though we've sent our tribe members to its resting place multiple times in the past. So the golden rock already has an owner. But how is this possible? He's from the berserker tribe and doesn't practice the ways of the shamans. How did he get the approval of the golden rock? In the time the split dawn sucked in a sharp breath, the golden rock arrived from where it was in the distance. Along with its arrival came a huge gust of wind that made people feel as if an innumerable amount of invisible mountains were crashing into them. The remaining shamans, who had surrounded Su Ming and Tian Xiezi, lost all will to fight when the golden rock appeared. Terror appeared in the midst of their confusion, and they did not dare attack. The Golden Rock. Oh heavens, it's the Golden Rock. Uproars broke out at the sacred beast's appearance. The shamans held a level of respect akin to meeting the might of heaven itself in the face of their sacred beasts. This creature was like the totems within the shaman tribe. There was in no way they could fight against it. At that moment, as the Golden Rock swept past the land and brought with it a huge gust of wind, these people were like floating leaves in the sky and were thrown back. As booming sounds reverberated in the air, the wall of people crumbled down instantly. Su Ming sucked in a breath when he saw the Golden Rock closing in. Its gigantic body that exceeded 10,000 feet formed an intimidating pressure that made morning sky turn dark in an instant. It was covered by the Golden Rock's body as if it had just covered the sun. Compared to it, the people around him who were swept away by the huge gust of wind and Su Ming himself were so tiny that they could practically be disregarded. The Golden Rock forced its way into all their sights in an incredibly arrogant fashion. The moment it closed in, the extraordinarily mighty Golden Rock shone with a golden light that made it look like a golden eagle. It made the people be unable to look at it, especially into its eyes. There was an aloof look within its eyes, and as it swept its gaze across the land, cracking sounds would appear in the air as if the air itself could not withstand that pressure. The intelligence it had made Su Ming believe without a doubt that it had far surpassed the intellect of all the ferocious beasts he had ever seen. Even the rod snake could not compare with it in this. However, the rod snake was still an infant, so it was only natural that it would have a hard time competing against the Golden Rock, which was a sacred beast that was famous within the shaman tribes. When the Golden Rock's eyes fell on Su Ming as its gaze swept through the land, it paused for a moment to look at him, and at the moment it did so, the golden light within its eyes instantly became stronger. It made Su Ming shudder, as if everything about him had just been seen through. Any other ordinary berserker would have lost all ability to think, but Su Ming did not just practice in the ways of the berserkers. He also trained in the skills of aura refinement and turned it into his divine senses. The strength of his divine senses might perhaps be nothing to those in the other realms, but among his peers in the berserker tribe, he was second to none. At that moment, while the divine sense in his mind still could not withstand the Golden Rock's gaze, Su Ming could at least still tell the reason behind the Golden Rock's interest in him. Su Ming had a feeling that the Golden Rock was not looking at him, but at the Han Mountain Bell residing within his body. More accurately speaking, there was something within Han Mountain Bell that the Golden Rock sensed, and it wanted to take a closer look. Almost at the same instant the Golden Rock trained its gaze on Su Ming, the rod-shaped insect-snake hybrid that was recovering slowly in the Han Mountain Bell within Su Ming suddenly curled up from its sleeping, relaxed position within the bell. It lifted its head instantly and its dull eyes immediately regained their cruel glare. The glare seemed like the last rays of sunlight before the sky turned dark. It seemed strong, but was in reality rather scattered, and hidden within the depths of the glare was the rod snake's pride. It was as if that pride existed within the blood and soul of the rod snake itself. That pride was passed down through generations and existed even now, it had never disappeared. That pride that was hidden within its cruelty made it seem that if they took away the difference between their power, then the rod snake and Golden Rock did not even belong in the same category of creatures, because within the rod snake's pride was an air of dominance and supremacy. Su Ming noticed that aura. He was shaken by this, and the light in the Golden Rock's eyes wavered for a brief moment, and Su Ming felt as if he saw hesitation within him, and he even saw the hint of fear lying underneath that hesitation. At that moment, Su Ming had a sudden feeling that the rod snake was like a tiger cub. Although it was small and injured, even if the tiger cub ran into lone wolves, it would still lift up its head and show off its unique aura. That feeling only appeared for an instant. As the Golden Rock turned its gaze away, that feeling also disappeared without a trace. No one around him noticed it, not even Tian Xiezi. After all, the Golden Rock's gaze only stayed on Su Ming for a moment. In Su Ming's eyes, it had happened slowly, but in reality, it only lasted for a moment. When the Golden Rock's gaze swept through the entire land, a huge gust of wind swept through the land. The Golden Rock lifted its head and with its mouth wide open, it let out a shriek towards the sky. While the shriek might not have been deafening, it still reached its peak in an instant and turned into an indescribable sound wave that traveled in all directions. When the shamans who were swept away by the wind heard the shriek, they let out shrill cries of pain and blood gushed out of their eyes, mouth, nose, they exploded and their flesh and blood scattered into the air. The ferocious beasts under their feet had long since frozen, ever since the golden rock arrived. They were shivering in midair and did not dare move. The sound wave contained a power that made booming sounds echo in Su Ming's head, and his mind instantly turned blank. When he regained his senses, he saw the old spirit medium's head exploding as he cried out in pain. His entire body was dyed in black blood as he fell to the side. Besides the devastating deaths of the shamans around him, Su Ming also saw the two beautiful split dawns bleeding from their eyes, noses, ears, and mouths. They looked pathetic as they ran away with their faces tainted with endless terror. Yet as they ran, one of them could not endure the golden rock's voice and coughed out blood, trembling. As he ran, his body started shattering inch by inch, and before he could make it to 100 feet, he crumbled into a mass of blood and flesh, then disappeared. Only his right arm, which still held onto his lover's hand, remained. The remaining man looked at the arm in his hand and let out a cry of despair, but he did not turn back. He charged forward in a mad dash instead, and a large amount of blood mist seeped out of his body and surrounded him. As the blood mist spread out, his beautiful face started decaying, and in an instant, his beauty turned into horrifying ugliness. However, he still managed to escape and disappear from Su Ming's sight. At the same time, the body of the person that was formed from the ghosts which had Tian Shiezi buried within crumbled and exploded under the golden rock's voice. It turned into the faces that were full of hate once again before they disappeared into thin air. Tian Shiezi opened his eyes. He took in a breath of the bloody stench around him and asked calmly, "My fourth disciple, have you killed before?" This was the first time Su Ming saw such a large-scale massacre, the first time he saw Tian Shiezi act, and the first time he saw the might of the golden rock. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he nodded his head. "I have. Chase him down. I'll wait for you here." Tian Shiezi cast him a glance and walked onto the golden rock's back calmly. The golden rock closed its eyes and allowed Tian Shiezi to climb onto its back to sit down cross-legged. The power of those two split dawns is equivalent to the berserkers in the berserker soul realm. One of them has died now, and there's only one left. He's also injured, so his power is now only around the bone sacrifice realm. Split dawns are rare among the shamans. Finding a pair like this isn't easy, but he should be very quick. You also stayed around for too long. If you want to chase him down, then you will have to enter into the deep parts of the shaman tribe. Do you dare do it, my fourth disciple? Tian Shiezi asked languidly. Su Ming lowered his head and a light flashed in his eyes. He did not speak, simply turned around and charged towards the direction of the only person who escaped in a long arc. "I will wait for you for 3 days. If you don't come back 3 days later, then you won't be able to come back." Tian Shiezi's voice floated through the air and spread out, falling into Su Ming's ears. However, he did not falter for even a moment. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the distance. Tian Shiezi closed his eyes slowly and sat down on the golden rock to wait. A bleak air covered the entire land of the shamans. The moaning from the wind sounded like mournful human cries. As the sound traveled through the land and the wind blew past the sky, it brought about an unfamiliarity and a depressing feeling that pressed heavily against one's chest. Su Ming charged through the sky belonging to the shaman tribe, yet after he flew for an hour, he frowned and lowered his head to look at the land beneath him. The land was covered in an endless sea of forest. A glint appeared in his eyes and Su Ming flew towards the ground. After a moment, he stepped on the muddy floor in the forest and closed his eyes to spread out his divine senses. After a moment, he opened his eyes and disappeared from the spot. His body floated like smoke, and after a moment, he appeared by an old tree. Su Ming crouched down and touched the wet ground. There was a drop of blood there. He is afraid of being chased down, that's why he didn't fly in the air. Instead, he chose to use the forest as his cover and hide in familiar lands so that he can buy time to recover, Su Ming mumbled and a smile appeared on his lips. Forests were his home.